you have last night?
Yeah, so now you will be able to tell by 10 o'clock how it was because I had vegetables and pasta last night. And so now let's see how it is throughout the rest of the day.
Does it matter what time you eat?
Yes. Also, it does matter what time you eat.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
So
an
you'll
interesting
open this
concept.
ledger and then you'll share with us. On a certain date, I had eaten this, and then the following day, this is how I was feeling. So you just do an entire diary
I will let you know.
for an entire week
Okay.
so that you can prove this thing to us.
I also haven't finished reading the book, but okay.
Has it started contradicting itself? It's not saying- However,
Let's see.
you're not entirely what you eat.
I am about halfway through, so let's wait and see.
Okay. Welcome to the show. Today is the 27th of August, 2020. This is the day that
I thought you were going to say this is the day that
the Lord has made. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 years ago, by this time, actually, I remember by this time I was at Uhuru Park ready to cover the promulgation of the Constitution. And crowds had been there since 3 a.m.
Oh.
Walking into Uhuru Park, jubilation. It was drizzling that morning. The military had been preparing to do a parade that day, so the military had occupied a section of Uhuru Park. And yeah, it was a big day. A new dawn for Kenya. And all those were the headlines that morning. Today, what are the headlines? Well, we'll be looking at them. They are very different. But they indicate that now we are fighting corruption, which is what we wanted to do 10 years ago. It's just that this corruption has happened within the last 10 years.
Only.
Yeah. So welcome to the show. Today we will be discussing, we'll be looking and reviewing the Constitution in its 10th year. And we'll start from the whole journey of how the Constitution journey began, the clamor for a new Constitution, the first the referendum that happened, and people rejected the draft Constitution that had been presented by Mr. Amos Wako, and then the second referendum that people accepted. But before we do that, let's begin where we always begin. And because now we know that fellow Kenyans, yesterday was the man wearing a beautiful shirt. What are our numbers?
Well, so we are looking at 213 new cases, and unfortunately, 5 more have died. 241 recovered, bringing the total number of recoveries in the country so far to 19,296. However, with the 213 more cases of COVID, we've risen to a total of 33,016. This was announced by President Kenyatta yesterday when he was talking about other things that will continue. The curfew from 9 p.m. till 4 a.m. continues for another 30 days. We've also seen that the president urged Kenyans to continue observing the guidelines that have been set out for protection when it comes to infections by COVID-19. He also extended the opening of bars for an hour. So instead of 7 p.m., it's now 8 p.m. So I guess you can get more.
Wait. Opened bars. Eateries or bars?
Bars and restaurants.
Bars are not open.
Restaurants.
Eating places.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So until 8 p.m., whereas they had to close at 7 p.m., they now can close at 8.
Curfew time is still 9.
Curfew's time is still 9 o'clock, yes, and that continues for another 30 days. He also mentioned, that he was encouraged and continued to encourage Kenyans to, pay attention to these guidelines, and that if it is that these numbers that have been recognized in the last couple of days are a true reflection of what the caseload is in the country, then perhaps the country has done much better than was expected in a short period of time. He also talked about the fact that despite COVID, the country or the economy had grown by 4.6%, as opposed to last year, 5.5%, where there was no COVID-19. And so he was encouraged with the growth of the economy. All right. So
the economy had grown when? It was a year period or the quarter?
the quarter. No, so what he said is that in this time of COVID, in the last 3 months, they had recognized the growth of 4.6, as opposed to the whole of last year, growth of 5.5%. So he was quite encouraged, and those, looking at the economic forecast of the country, also quite encouraged, because even with the depressed situation, the Kenyan economy is doing well.
It's doing well. Eh? I remember when there was a president called Mwai Kibaki, and we were talking about economic growth, and the president would keep saying the economy is growing, and his lieutenants would say the economy is growing. There was an opposition leader, and the official leader of the opposition was one gentleman called Uhuru Kenyatta. And once he addressed a press conference and asked, this whole talk we're being told by the government that the economy is growing, is it trickling down to the people? If the people are not feeling the economy growing, really, what is this that the government is telling us? That was the opposition leader, Uhuru Kenyatta, then.
The issue of economic growth as an academic exercise, it sounds very good. But remember, that's number crunching. It has hardly anything to do with the reality, as we Kenyans say,
On the ground.
Yes.
Anyway, so if the experts have told us the economy is growing, it's okay.
It must be.
Well, what do we know?
But even growth has to be attributed to certain sectors. Are all sectors of the economy growing?
Obviously not.
Yes.
The aviation sector cannot be said to be having
No,
growing.
it can't be.
The floriculture and horticulture sector,
Limping.
Nope.
Yes. So,
The real estate sector, nope.
yes. Even the banking sector keeps reporting something they never do. Reduction. It's not losses, just reduction in profits. So, this growth, perhaps, if it does exist, it would help tremendously if details were given as to where it is this particular
This growth has taken place.
can be seen.
So you can go look for it there.
Right. Also of interest is the fact that he talked about corruption. He did mention KEMSA and said that, you know what, if anybody is found culpable, they will face the full force of the law, and nobody will go scot-free.
No stone will be left
That
unturned.
one he has said many times.
He said it again yesterday.
We
And
had
he's
it
given
for
them
5 years.
21
He
days.
actually quoted some Latin and said, look here, 21 days, we're going to find out what exactly happened, and you found with fault, you will not go free.
These timetables with
Or
specific
prima
timelines.
facie.
Yes.
No. Specific timelines. The one thing that has worked consistently and has shown to be true is the 30-day curfew.
Yeah.
Those timelines work.
Kabisa. And it's maintained. And when we have a little upping of the time when people can go to, say, cultural establishments like restaurants, we understand. But in terms of a politician, who the president is, giving us timelines as to which can happen. I'm sorry, there's a background that we have to refer to when it comes to promises that Jubilee made, he made, his deputy uttered. That story we don't really want to go into there because it is a litany of unfulfilled promises.
In this particular time, he would argue differently. He'd say, I have not promised anything. I have just demanded that we get answers within 21 days. From the agencies.
A demand and a promise, in my opinion, are the same thing. Why 21 days? Why not make it 31 days?
Or 7.
Or 7.
Because people are
Or
agitating.
14. The agitation is all good and well.
And he doesn't understand
The
why.
moment
Why
you-
should it take so long to investigate this matter?
The moment you specify a time, you might as well tell us that is exactly what you plan to do, because that's exactly how we're going to understand it. If you say you're working on it, then that's the realm of vagaries, and it'll remain vague. But the moment you mention a specific time, oh man.
But have some faith, City. 21 days, we've seen 21 days working before. 21 days, county governments had 21 days to improve their capacity and have at least, how
Be
many
ready for
beds?
COVID, at least
30,000
300 beds. 300 beds per county.
This was done
Now,
in 21 days.
now that
and all these other
schools
measures.
are set, okay, barring, of course, the court order to begin, those beds that they borrowed from the schools.
Set to do it. Nobody's set to do narrowing.
I'm being facetious.
Set.
Boarding schools are actually not going to open. It's just the spaces that they occupy.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Quickly looking at the other global numbers.
Okay, so let's look quickly. The United States has now crossed the 6 million mark in terms of numbers. 6,300,000 165, with 180,653 deaths. Brazil and India are, as we know, over 3 million cases. Brazil inching closer and closer to 4 million, and India almost at 3.5 million, with 3,307,749 cases. Mexico still continues to record those high numbers that has pushed them to 573,000. South Africa now at 615,701 cases, with 13,502 deaths. South Africa is easily seeing about 8,000 cases every day, and that's the average over time. Italy, although in the last couple of days they did see some heightened cases, we still see that countries like Saudi Arabia, Bangladesh, Pakistan recording higher numbers than Italy, even with the surge that we've seen over the last couple of days. Countries around the world still continue. China again with 8 new cases over the last few days, but still found very they've not been able to cross that 85,000 case mark until about now. Look at the country where it started all. It started in China, but they never did pass 100,000 cases, whereas we have countries like the United States at 6 million. Just in terms of comparison, quite a huge difference. All right, so this is where we are. And still, the thing is, in a lot of European countries at this point, the dilemma or the debacle in the minds of government is, do we open schools or do we allow children to go back to school next week, which is when they were supposed to open? From Italy to the UK to Ireland to France and Spain, do we let them go back to school? Because they've already seen this surge likely to increase with the opening of schools next week. So this is what countries are dealing with. This is what we see.
All right, 6:15. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Time for us to take a break, take a look at the weather, and then we will look at the big headlines this morning. Good morning.
24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
As the world changes, so do we. We adapt to our situations to bring out the best in us. This is why the Standard Group and Oxford University Press East Africa have partnered to bring you Tutor Summer Online. For just 10 shillings, you have unlimited access to the reputable source of revision materials conveniently. All you have to do is log into tutorsoma.standardmedia.co.ke and make the most of the time for all students, including candidates for both primary and secondary schools. So, as we stay home, we keep dreams of future successes
we're looking at mostly cloudy
alive.
conditions in Nairobi at 14. We'll see highs of 24. And there is a chance of a drizzle later, coming down to lows of 13. In Njeri, mostly cloudy conditions at 14 will take us to highs of 23. And a chance of wet conditions as well. It seems like it's going to be raining across the country, because in Nakuru, where it's clear now at 12, there'll be rain showers in the afternoon going to highs of 24. Eldoret is clear at 11, going to highs of 21, with thunderstorms forecasted for later. It's partly cloudy in Kisumu. We'll go to highs of 28 and lows of 16. Kakamega is clear at 14. Thunderstorms expected later, with highs of 26 and lows of 13. In Mombasa, it's likely to be raining soon. We'll go to highs of 28 and come down to lows of 23. It's already light showers in Malindi at 24. We'll go to highs of 28 and likely to continue with rains throughout the day. Take a look into Kampala, where it's partly cloudy at 18 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 17. And there will be showers in Uganda today. In Tanzania, Dar es Salaam specifically, partly cloudy at 22, highs of 30 and lows of 21, with showers expected later. It's getting warmer and warmer every day in South Africa. Johannesburg at 11 degrees, we'll see highs of 22 and just partly cloudy conditions. Clear skies rule Lagos this morning at 24, highs of 29 and lows of 23, partly cloudy conditions to continue throughout the day. Let's look into London, where at 14 degrees it's partly cloudy. We'll go into a drizzle later with highs of 19 and lows of 13. And in Paris, Paris, clear skies at 14. We've got highs of 27 and lows of 13. It's Wednesday night in New York and it's raining. Thunderstorms here and there at 27. And they'll wake up to more rain with highs of 27 and lows of 21.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
It's 19 minutes past 6. Let's find out what part of the human anatomy is featured in today's proverb.
Well, it isn't so much as part of the human anatomy as in a human condition. A man with diarrhea will not require anyone to give him directions to the door. All right. A man with a running stomach will not require anyone to give him directions to the door. This one is said to be a saying that emanates from Uganda.
All right.
Mwenye haja
Okay.
huenda choo.
Yes.
Any other that you can think of in Swahili or any other language, please let us know. Spice FMKE on Twitter. A man with diarrhea does not need directions to the door. All right, so let's take a look at today's headlines. Start.
Something really interesting. It isn't really a headline. It's on actually page 26, but it caught my attention. Because it's something that doesn't happen in the West, but it is advice that Hillary Clinton was giving to Joe Biden. And it's saying, if it is a close run, don't concede.
Told you these Democrats are preparing not to accept defeat.
Don't concede. And it is said, you see, Clinton won almost 3 million votes when she stood against Trump in 2016.
Yeah.
It's in the electoral college count that she lost. It isn't the first. Al Gore had a similar issue,
Yep.
a similar problem with George W. Bush. Yes. And the win was hinged on the state of Florida. And what was also of interest, well, of coincidental interest, was that the governor of Florida at that time, one Jeb Bush, was the brother of George W. Bush. So, I leave it for someone to figure this out. In an African setting, we don't need to figure it out. We would know.
They call it rigging.
Yes, it's called rigging. Now, why this becomes important is because this postal system voting, it is spoken as though it's the first time it's happening. Not so. This is something that has been happening for the longest time in the U.S. because not everyone has always been able to go to the ballot box. So they've used the system before.
Yeah.
But somehow this system that has been used before with significant success is suddenly being touted as something that is having a problem. Again, in our setting, we would know, they're creating a problem or they're talking about a problem so that they can blame a win or loss, either which way, whichever suits them, on this. I thought I should just mention that one.
Okay.
All right.
Back to Kenya.
All right. Sleepy Joe, you will lose. You better just concede today. Today is when the president is speaking at the Republican National Conference, isn't it? Right?
Yes.
Bus. You will hear what he says. Let's come back to the country.
So, it would appear that some people were arrested yesterday. Okay? According to the front page of the Daily Nation, Migori Governor Okoh and his 4 children accused of stealing millions from public coffers yesterday had a long day that ended in them sleeping on cold, hard floors of police cells. The Obados spent the night at the basement cells of Integrity Center, the nerve center of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission in Nairobi, upon completing a 315-kilometer ride from Kisii to the capital. So, it was not a fun night, unfortunately. They spent the night. Attempts by their lawyers to have them freed, citing closure of courts, hit a brick wall as detectives insisted they remain in custody awaiting arraignment today. Reset beset with the pending criminal cases, including the alleged murder of his girlfriend, Sharon Otieno, and possession of firearms illegally, Mr. Obado is clearly a man under siege.
Completely.
The day started with the county boss and his children, Susan Scarlett, Jerry Zachary, Evelyn Adhiambo, and Dan Achola Okoh, surrendering to anti-corruption officers in Kisii to prelude their impending arrests. They were interrogated for 3 hours, and when they emerged, they were put on brave faces before they were bundled into waiting vans for their journey to the capital. The Director of Public Prosecutions, Nuruddin Haji, on Tuesday had ordered their arrest to face corruption and larceny charges after the EACC untangled and exposed what is said was a web of corruption.
Wow. And then the Standard today reveals how the Obado King and allies moved million. And this is according to now the details that have emerged from the EACC. The various companies, remember Mama Penina and her children with some of their wives opened up companies. Those companies won tenders with the county government of Migori. Now, that's not the problem. The problem is that these companies then would end up paying some monies to the accounts that belong to either Obado or his children, right? And this is where now the Standard gives a very nice chronology of some of these companies and how they were winning some contracts, winning a 1.4 million contract. One company here called Touchdog Printers winning contracts worth 37 million shillings. Some two companies winning contracts worth 163 million shillings. Other companies winning contracts 30 million. Another one 139.9 million shillings. You know, all that money. And then it all comes down to how it entered the accounts of the Obado children. One, Achola Okoh, 26 million went to her. Susan Okoh, 7 million. Njeri Okoh, 6.6 million. For tuition, university, and upkeep.
Okay.
That's how it went. This is an interesting one.
Not only interesting, this one falls in the category of sagas that you call gripping. Because in our history, even in the fight against graft, one doesn't hear of children being involved. We saw the involvement of Babayao's daughter in the Kiambu saga. And then the Ngaritas now brought in the family dimension to this whole drama revolving real corruption. And now this one, this one even has a tinge of sadness to it. Because it's like you almost feel, did the children actually need to have been involved? Did they need to be part and parcel of it? Because the question that will be asked is, what did they know about these proceeds? And their participation, apart from receiving it, what else did they do?
What else did they do?
Yes. Because by the time the details that we keep reading in the papers are being given, I believe the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission have done they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
There's no guesswork here.
They've done quite a bit of work, yes.
And remember, the amounts that are taking this family to court is a specific amount that doesn't even get to 100 million shillings. But what I find fascinating about these cases, whether it's the Ngarita family, whether it's the governor of Migori's case that we're now reading, is that what we've read in the past regarding thefts in our counties, you actually get numbed to huge figures.
Yeah.
100,000 is a lot of money. 10,000 is a lot of money. 1,000 shillings is a lot of money. But we talk of millions as though you're talking about cents.
Just a few million.
In fact, the mind almost says, oh, they didn't hit $1 billion.
Yeah.
And you're asking, again, that question we like asking, how did we get here where hundreds of millions of shillings? And then there's a question that has to be asked. The business that they say they were doing, were they actually doing it?
Did they deliver on these contracts?
Okay. Forget overpricing on anything else that may come in as a matter of question or query, but did they deliver? You see why this has to be asked? You know, we're going to be talking about at some point the issues surrounding COVID and KEMSA.
Yep.
That question has to be asked. Fine. There was malpractice. did they deliver?
Because the bottom line is, this is money that was meant to go for to do something.
It was.
So if that was done, is one part. Did the people of Migori lose out on everything? Like lose out on getting the services and lose out on the money? Or was there service delivery here?
Very true. And then the secondary question will come in, that service delivery, did it actually cost
Yes.
what it is we are told?
Did it
actually
justify
yes.
this cost?
This amount.
You know, there's another story that's just sliding along and being forgotten. And this is the story of the Masai Mara University.
Yes.
As we're talking about corruption, we forget this one. So there were whistleblowers who worked at the Masai Mara University. And they came out and said, you know what, this is what has been happening. We have been intimidated by the VC, and this is what was happening. The VC would send someone to come and receive some money. So the EACC went into investigations, and these people have been taken to court. The Vice Chancellor, Finance Officer, and the driver have denied corruption charges related to misappropriation of not 73 million shillings like Okoth and family, but 177 million shillings. This is the VC, Mary Walingo, her driver, Simon Kasaine Oleseno, John Amadi Obare, acting DVC for finance, Anaklet Biketo Kumu, finance, Nur Hassan Abdi, the VC's driver is Nur Hassan Abdi, the Simon Olekasaine is an officer in the administration department. These guys were in court. They were each released on a cash bail, I think, of 10 million each, or something like that. Was it 10 million or 100 million? Some good cash they're supposed to deposit in the courts. But the intrigue surrounding this particular story is how somebody working in that university decided, you know what, no. Enough is enough. I have got to speak out about this. And that's the person who just blew the whistle in this particular matter.
You know, one of the things, there's a term that is often used when something catches momentum and starts moving on its own. It's called snowballing. What is clear to me is that something has begun and it is continuing. If you look at what the state is doing and they are making it public, apart from arresting, they are taking back property.
Yep.
Whether it is vehicles, whether it is land, whether it is houses, whether it is money in your account. Now, this is something we spoke about and said, so long as people are just going to court and they still keep the proceeds from the ill-gotten proceeds from whatever nefarious activities they were involved in, what do you really change? But when these are actually taken, now that signals a serious change.
Yes.
But if I were to look at what Justice Ngugi said on the Nagarita's case, she categorically said that she did not see how this particular family, these three people, said these people didn't have the capacity to supply goods worth 400 million.
They didn't have the capacity.
No, they didn't have the capacity. Sorry. She says they didn't have the capacity. And according to her, there must have been someone higher up. These were puppets. The puppet master or mistress was somewhere pulling the strings. Said, these people, and she saw them.
Way.
No, they didn't have the capacity.
As I see them
No.
like this.
6:30. Let's take a break and come back and look at the Ingaritas, who are forfeiting 400 million shillings worth of property to the states. Hey, let's look at traffic. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Okay,
Traffic.
guys, Thursday morning, and hopefully it will not be a crazy day. Coming from Kitengela to Athi River, no issues. Traffic is flowing very well in both directions, in and outbound. We shouldn't have problems, but we'll have to wait and see. We know that there will be a hold-up on Mombasa Road at some point, but it shouldn't be too bad. Coming off of Thika Road, getting into the CBD as well, looks good. Out of Westlands, flowing very smoothly, as is on Langata Road and Gong Road. Getting to the mortuary roundabout and then on towards Valley Road or down Gong Road towards Community. It's fine. It looks pretty good. We'll let you know how that may change in terms of weather, in terms of visibility once we get more information. But for now, guys, heading out, you should be all right. Spice FM KE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us know where you might be stuck, or if the roads are absolutely moving very well, do let us know and we can spread the word.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
25 minutes to 7. So tell us about the Ngiritas.
Well, you know, what is amazing is, one, the length of time it took for them to accumulate this wealth which the state is now recalling. Okay? But significantly, the justice said when the asset recovery agency come for your property, there was a bit of a pushback, and it was, look, folks, we can explain it. And the judge dismissed and said, no, you are given time to explain. And this agency has proved conclusively that the manner in which you acquired this particular property or these properties amounts to it being fraudulent. So you have not only a case to answer, but you are forfeiting those things. You know this one? Yes.
It's 3 members of the same family.
It is.
400 million shillings. Between them, according to the judge, they received approximately 400 million shillings from the NYS.
465 to be precise.
Imagine. And they used some of the money to acquire the properties which constitute proceeds of crime. Evidence shows that on the periods that they received the money, they went on a spending spree to hide their theft. You know, money comes, 400 million enters your account today, CT. And you need to remove it from that account. What do you do? 400 million shillings.
I immediately look for my pastor.
And go and confess your sins.
Immediately. No, I say, something has gone wrong here. Money has appeared in my account.
No, money has not just appeared. You've
meaning I know where it has come from.
Yes.
My friend.
And you know that you...
Essentially, you're saying, let me take on the persona of a thief.
Yes.
And a crook.
Yes.
And a member of a cartel. And a cabal. All rolled into one. Okay? And the proceeds from my ill-gotten... from my malpractice has arrived with us. The fruition is with us. 400 million shillings in my account.
Yes.
That one. My head is still swimming and rolling. I mean, that's a great deal of money, Chief. In my personal account.
You know, you start thinking, okay, so where someone is selling some piece of land here for, how much is it? 50 million. You're like, okay. Give them 50. That. You have 350 left, and you need to spend it within 7 days.
So has a place where they sell cars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go buy it.
So, Nani, if I wanted 10 cars...
Okay, we don't want you to buy 10 because that will...
set off red flags.
Oh, no, not... I pay for the 10. I don't necessarily have to have the 10 in my compound. Because as it is now, even fitting 2 cars in my compound is a problem. So 10 will be a bit of a problem. Someone may think I myself...
Transferring ownership triggers something with KRA.
Doesn't it just? That is a thought. That is a thought that usually comes later.
After you've done
that amount of money, my friend,
confuses
will
you,
befuddle you completely.
It confuses you. So what they need to forfeit include a vehicle, 2 acres land in Trans Nzoia, a half-acre land in Naivasha, a quarter-acre land in Nakuru East, a quarter-acre in Njoro, another piece of land in Naivasha, all valued at approximately 100 million. We have 300 to spend. Have you bought all those pieces of land? That's 100 M. City. Did I tell you? A quarter in Trans Nzoia, 2 acres in Trans Nzoia, half acre in Naivasha. Go to Nakuru East, buy a quarter acre. Go to Njoro, buy a quarter acre. Go to Naivasha, find another piece of land. Oh, huge piece of land. Spend money on it. Buy.
What I find strange, they didn't contribute to the church, or they didn't build a school.
You see, now this one is not. There's no trace of that. You may find that they gave
Maybe
some.
they gave some 1
pastors
million
and,
here.
Small amounts here and there.
Yeah, and also that one doesn't make for a good case.
You say because I gave
And
the
you can't
church,
forfeit.
so therefore,
Now, who will you be going
It's something
after?
they did for the public good. Yeah, that one, no. It's what is yours and
What is yours.
what you set aside to enjoy.
This time when they went to Naivasha municipality and found someone selling a piece of land in Naivasha municipality, right? The person quoted whatever amount. They paid 46 million. 46 M.
You know, million.
Pesa haiishi. After you've bought all these pieces of land, you've only spent 100 million shillings. You still have 300 to spend. Go buy motor vehicles. How many cars do you buy? A Land Cruiser V8, 14.4 million shillings. Iko na nini? These tires look old. That you bought them last week. No, they are old. Put new tires.
Million I know how to relate to. It resonates in my mind. If we moved there to the billion, I would be confused. But
no, you've not even reached billion.
No, but this one is even confusing. Because a million shillings is a lot of
You
money.
spent 100 million shillings and you still have 3 times of that left to spend.
And
you know, it's within a short time because you must spend. So according to Justice Ngugi, she says, perhaps, maybe where I'm sitting as a judge, there's something I don't understand. So perhaps there are gifted families in Kenya who are entrepreneurs extraordinary, who can, in their individual capacities and through their businesses, transact business with a state entity in a brief 2-year period and get 400 million. Maybe there are people who are business savvy like that. Maybe. However, you're paid 133 million shillings in a single day. Out of that,
what I find strange,
I'm looking at these 3 family members and I don't trust that they are in that perhaps category.
I'm trying to get a perspective. What is what you may consider a regular fees for, say, a child in primary school per term?
Even if you're going to the most expensive.
No, I'm just talking about
just like
where
basic.
the bulk of our population go. Public schools.
Bulk of your population does not have 400 million shillings. So let's talk about the people
No.
who have 400
I'm not talking
million.
about 400 million. I'm giving it perspective.
Yeah.
Because
Ordinarily.
ordinarily,
Public school.
I'm talking about the fees you pay, whether it's secondary school. Okay, let's even go to university. What fees do you pay for the university? There's a point I'm getting at here.
What fees do you pay for university here?
Well,
In public university?
Yeah.
It's
per semester, 50,000, 60,000.
It's about that amount, right?
Yes, they wanted to increase it. The point I'm trying to make is these figures are astronomical and they're astounding. If you give a perspective on what it costs for an ordinary family to live from 1 month to the other, even take it to what you may consider a regular middle class family to live from 1 month to the other, this amount of money, it is colossal.
This amount of money given to an ordinary person that you're talking about would make them run mad. And I'm not even talking, I'm being serious here. Would make somebody go crazy. Give that amount of money to somebody who's just getting by, putting their children through school, university, whatever it may be, providing for their family on a daily basis. Give them this amount, and you've done something in terms of the psychotic
I don't actually need to stretch
this
it.
individual.
There are individuals who live in Samburu who won a case against the British government. And when they won this case, they were awarded some hefty amounts. Now, the story doesn't begin there. This story I'm telling begins with what happened after they had received the money. And it's a story of extreme poverty that followed. Because the millions landed, and boy, did they land.
there was confusion.
That's what I'm saying. It's temporary
Total
insanity.
confusion.
Yeah.
If you go to areas where you have cash crops in my neck of the woods, where they grow, say, tobacco, or in the olden days when sugarcane actually produced a lot of money, a similar madness would ensue. You would find, you had to go to Kisumu to cash your check. So what would happen is, someone would take that check and not come back home for maybe a month.
Yes, no. Enjoying the good
The
life.
stories would go, there's people, and there was a bus that you'd board in Kisumu, and following morning you're in Mombasa.
Your wife is looking for you.
The lake with salt. Yes. Same in the Migori area, people who would get tobacco bonus. You go to cash a check in Migori town. There's a bus that leaves, comes to Nairobi. Then another one, Mombasa, direct. They never thought of boarding a plane, just a bus and in Mombasa, because that money was colossal. And by the way, it was barely 100. If it hit 200,000, it was too much. Barely 100. But now you're talking about millions, my friend. Even in this day and age, $1 million is a lot of money.
It's a lot of cash, my friend.
The question, though, that I have to ask is, are people who are involved in these activities looking and learning and understanding that the good times that they consider to be good times are over?
Absolutely not. See, somebody else's bad luck should not determine your own fate.
Then in that case, we can sit back and wait for many more
Many
arrests and many people who are going to forfeit, meaning people who are known, and even those who had cases and they thought that the cases were over and they could sit back and enjoy their property.
Yeah.
You know, cases are going to be unearthed.
It's like asking whether when a thief sees another one being lynched, torched, and, killed, that they go back and decide, hey, no, this is the last time. I'm never going to steal again. No. Tomorrow morning, in fact, that evening, there will be.
We saw a story of a lady who was in jail for 17 years. She came out, and the next month, what was she doing? Robbery with violence. Back for another 35.
Yep.
It sounds like it
Oh, no.
becomes part.
Change. You do what you know best.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of you. Yeah.
You just live your life, basically.
You know, the normalcy that I would like to see is what we're seeing with our anti-graft agencies. So that it becomes normal and you know that you will be followed, you will be arrested, and your property will be forfeited. Now, yes, that normalcy is what I pray to see, because it's a good normalcy. So, and whether we like it or not, it will act as some deterrent.
Yes.
The degree I don't know, but it will be
on some level.
Someone
will
will sit
deterrent,
and
yeah.
think. Remember, when we had the case regarding the theft of maize, the Oluke case, as we like calling it, it was a bit of a shock because the lady who is involved is senior, is a senior citizen, and it raised issues. But now we see children being involved. Now, this is the law being put into action. If it can be determined that the proceeds from something that is illicit has gotten to you, man, you're just as culpable.
Unajua tu.
Yes.
It's 14 minutes to 7 o'clock. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's remind you about the portal by the Kenya Ports Authority, www.kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo.
So we're going to look at vessel service processes today, which are made available on the on Captain Cargo today. And looking at this portal, we know that there's certain things that you must go through, whether importation or exportation of goods. So we're going to be looking at that today and what Captain Cargo has to offer. How about we kick it off by looking at what is submitted to the shipping by the shipping agent in form of what is called a booking request, right? So there's a notification of arrival. You don't just have to sit out at the port and wait saying, well, there's this ship coming and I'm expecting my goods. No, they actually tell you notification of arrival, pending arrival in 2-3 days, your stuff will be here. And then, you get that notification. Then your shipping agent submits what they call an import cargo manifest. And this is done to KRA prior to the arrival of the vessel. And then the shipping agent receives a vessel control number for the ship to call and voyage online. So it's great the way this stuff works in tandem. A booking request is made, there's a manifest that is then sent, and there's somebody who calls and says, we're actually arriving, so that you can await your cargo. So we're going to look at the rest of these processes and how they work. Captain Cargo makes it easy for you to know what's going on.
It's on www.kpa.co.ke/Captain KARGO. Good morning.
Spice FM, Malindi. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, so today, being the day that we celebrate the promulgation of the new constitution 10 years ago, we'll be having conversations around the constitution later. Now, let's look at other headlines in the papers. What you have.
So, we have a deal, say senators, on revenue, county funding. After 8 days of horse trading, a 12-member Senate committee to hammer out consensus on county revenue sharing formula announces a breakthrough. Now, looking at the details of what this breakthrough could possibly be, the much-awaited consensus to unlock the revenue sharing formula has been reached. This is after the 12-member committee, co-chaired by Moses Wetangula of Bungoma and Johnson Sakaja of Nairobi, agreed to present a comprehensive report to the House leadership today. Although the committee did not divulge the contents of the report to be handed over to Speaker Kenneth Lusaka, Majority Leader Samuel Pogiscio and his minority counterpart James Orengo say they disclosed that a deal had been struck. This is even as they warned county chiefs not to give excuses for providing inferior services or not providing at all, saying the National Treasury had given an access of up to 50% of last year's allocation, CT. The committee has been meeting for 8 days to strike a deal that would give the country a revenue sharing formula that takes into account the interests of all the counties. So it would appear that people are now satisfied. And because of that, a deal has been reached, which will be announced today. Also then of interest is the fact that they say, look, counties, don't tell us you've not paid salaries. Don't tell us that you've not started to fund your counties because you can't get money. National Treasury says you can get up to 50%. And once we agree on the rest of this, then the rest then will be sent to you. So maybe by the end of today, we will have white smoke.
Hey. But then later I saw a tweet from one of the members, and this is Senator Cherargei, saying no deal yet, no white smoke.
And now it's ready for today now.
Sending the whole thing into...
Tailspin.
Yep.
No, just taking it back to factory settings. I mean, this one, there will be an agreement at some point.
Yep.
Because this can't go on indefinitely. But on a brighter note, the Teachers Service Commission said the teachers under their scheme can now, and their families, can now be treated for COVID. This is after an agreement that they arrived at with their insurer. This is a consortium, a Minet Kenya-led consortium. They have an arrangement to provide healthcare insurance to the TAC members. So something that we talked about and which at that time was not a reality seems to be a reality now.
I think also insurance companies have realized, the cost here is what? It's just bed.
They've cranked up the numbers.
They've just looked at it and seen it's doable. Now, initially they didn't know what it was or what it would look like. Maybe now they're looking at it and thinking, well, now it's doable. If it's somebody going to spend some time in a hospital, if they need oxygen, if they need ICU, it's a small percentage of them who may get to that point. So it's
yes,
okay.
and the amount that is being insured is a decent amount. That is 750,000. This is new inpatient medical benefit for those under the lowest job group G.
Right. Nice one.
Note, new inpatient, meaning if you had pre-existing conditions, again, they're not saying it clearly, but it's being implied you may need to have a different discussion with them.
Oh.
Hey, now the number of dependents who are registered with the TSC are 1,006,637, meaning they're more than 1 million. And the number of children listed as beneficiary under the revised scheme, 515 and 68.
So dependent here means spouse then,
And or children.
because there's dependents and then children.
Yeah. No, dependents include spouses and children.
I start off with beneficiaries, meaning where beneficiary
From beneficiaries.
million
Okay.
registered. Registered. Okay.
How many teachers are we talking about? Over 600,000.
No. Remember, please understand, the teachers are around 600. Yes, you're right. Primary school are over 700, 375. If you're at around 500,000 plus, going to 600. So you consider the beneficiaries would be, as Nduh put it, spouse, children.
Okay. So there's a story here about 8 men who were shot dead at a go down in industrial area on Sunday. And this story is quite bizarre as it looks. So this is talking about some young men who live in the Sinai slums in industrial area. They, on Sunday evening, they were seated somewhere having some coffee at Mabati Shack in Nairobi when a man identified as Gakuru, alias Anko, walked in. This Anko man owns a truck, and he's known to the people there because often he comes and he gives them those manual jobs of kupakua na kupakua, and the other one is what? The other one, okay. Loading and unloading of the truck.
Oh, okay.
So on this particular day, he comes and says, okay, you guys, mnafanya nini? I have some job for you. I need us to go do some work. I need you to go and help me load some goods onto a lorry. After a brief a chat with one of the gentlemen called Kafu, they all got onto the truck and they went with the man. They arrived at this particular go down about 800 meters from this place where they were eating. About 10 minutes later, for 2 hours, they were loading assorted metals onto a white canter belonging to Anko. Anko is known in this area. He's not completely straight. Yeah, people know, but, well, that's none of their business.
He's not entirely bent.
Yeah.
Just slightly
he's
curved.
slightly curved. But, so it's none of their business. As long as he does not steal from them, it's okay.
all right.
It's all right. And he gives them work anyway. So people understood. Kumbe, police have been tipped off by somebody. So police come to this particular go down and they waylay the people who are loading onto this. 6 police officers came in 2 Land Cruisers, stormed the building, shot at the intruders, including Anko. A senior factory official says they have lost 6 million shillings worth of metal grills to such heists. Police claim that the men were armed criminals and they were caught cutting away goods from the go down. The officers claim that they recovered 2 pistols and one of them was a homemade gun and 2 bullets. So we can say each pistol had 1 bullet. So the residents of Sinai are saying, now surely the cops, it's okay that you found them doing all this. Maybe you should have arrested them and interrogated, and you'd have found out that these guys were actually just people who were given a job. They saw an opportunity.
Yeah.
They were just loaders who were called in by Anko. They were told Twendeni, and they went.
There are those who then might argue that Anko knows the sort of people he likes for such jobs. People who have skills.
So I mean, so the residents are saying that you shouldn't have killed them. You should have just done a little bit more investigating.
When have you ever read, when you have such a story where there is alleged theft, when people have said they should have been killed?
Hardly
And
ever.
yeah, except for those ones where they know this one. We saw a case a few months ago when there was one of these criminals, career criminals, and his mother and
The mother was
like,
yes.
you know what? That's what needed to happen because it was just becoming too much. He needed to. He was put down. He needed to have been put down. That's a mother saying this about her own child.
What do you think that
because
lady
she
had
realized
seen?
the things that she had seen.
Or
were-
She had
experienced.
gone through a lot.
No.
She had gone through a lot. So these guys, the neighbors are saying there's one particular gentleman called Kafu. Kafu had just returned from Kisii where he had gone to bury his 1-year-old daughter. He was back. He's a mason. He had not gotten any work. So he's just there. They know him. He's a mason. He does masonry work. Hakuna kazi ya mjengo. So he was sitting there. Uncle came, told him, let's go. He followed. It's an opportunity to get something. It's one of those where you say, all right, so
Well, there is a storm brewing in Parliament. Some MPs have determined that this Kazim Tani should be halted because they say, yes, a vast majority, I'm using terminology that I have read, are not benefiting from it. And they're urging the government to halt it because it's causing more chaos and more mayhem. The Muru MP, Mr. Peter Mwadhi, said the program is causing more division among the youth due to the exclusion of others. And other people have joined in that particular battle cry.
okay.
You move forward.
Why are some getting and some are not getting? Stop it. Let nobody get.
Not just half benefit. No. Right.
Let nobody get. Well, it's an interesting conversation because you remember we asked the same question to the two PSs that we've spoken to about this particular issue.
We did.
And they were saying, well, we only have this amount of money and we know it can't go round. We've tried the best we can, but still, unless the youth themselves get to understand why they're not involved, there'll always be issues. Anyway, coming to the top of the hour, this is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here because next we'll also be live on KTN Home as well. And our live stream is up, www.spicefm.co.ke. Good morning, 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
Okay, has it gotten any better or gotten any worse? I don't think so. Most parts of Nairobi look pretty good today. Let's step out then and look into Mombasa, into the town. Not much traffic coming on into Moi Avenue right there. If you want to look right around the ferry, it's not bad, guys. It's actually looking pretty good. Let's take a look then into Nakuru, where yesterday we saw some heightened levels of traffic, and Monday as well because of visibility issues. The sun seems to be peaking out in some areas, so it shouldn't be too terrible in Nakuru. Heading out then into Kisumu, heading towards the airport and back into the city, it's also flowing very well. Coming off of Mombasa Road as we come back into the NMA, slight traffic then between the SGR and Cabanas. There's also a little bit of traffic on Thika Road as you come to the Pangani underpass, but that will take you out into the CBD without too much of an issue. Apart from that, guys, it's looking good. Let us know if you get stuck somewhere and we'll maybe be able to send you an alternate route. The eastern and southern bypasses also looking good to and from Thika Road and Mombasa Road respectively. Spice of MKE, that's how you can get in touch with us on Twitter. Let us know what you see and we can keep it moving this Thursday.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
2.5 minutes past 7 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? Thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, Njeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7. We broadcast to the world as well on www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. For the next 2 hours, we are also live on KTN Home. I'd like to welcome our audience on KTN Home. Today, 27th of August, 2020, we are having a conversation around the Constitution of Kenya 2010, but also just starting from the entire journey towards that Constitution and then the journey since 2010. right? So we'll be beginning from having a conversation around how this journey came about, how we got to a point where we had the Bombers Constitutional Conference, the Bombers draft, much contentious Bombers draft. Then we had the Kilifi draft, then we had the Constitution referendum in 2005, and the new push to have a new constitution beginning in 2008 again, up to 2010. We'll be speaking to PLO Lumumba. Professor PLO Lumumba is a former Constitution of Kenya Review Commission Secretary and CEO, and therefore he was also the Chief Rapporteur of the Bomas Constitutional Conference. Professor Lumumba will be telling us about that journey up to that point, what the CKRC did. This is the Yashpal Gai Constitution Commission, which had brought in together even members from, remember the whole journey of forming the CKRC. First of all, President Daniel Arap Moi appoints this commission, and then there's a parallel move that's happening outside Parliament, led by the civil society and religious organizations and the opposition parties in Parliament. Some of them also joined this. It was called the Fungamano Initiative. Professor Yashpal Gai was like, all right, now let's find a way of bringing all this together so that we can together look at how to review the Constitution. That will be a journey. So 7 to 8 now, we'll be talking to Professor Lumumba. Then from 8 o'clock, we speak to Martha Karua. Remember, Martha Karua was the Justice Minister since 2006 to 2009. It's important to note that in 2006, when she took over, this was when President Mwai Kibaki had also had to reorganize his government after the referendum of 2005, where people who were allied to the president were championing the yes vote, and those who were allied to the then roads minister were championing the no vote. ODM was born in that whole drama.
In that maternity.
In that maternity, ODM was born. So Martha Karua became Justice Minister, and she was also very much involved in the new push for the new constitution. Remember the church also? We discussed about the churches. So the church was very much involved, and since then even the church has been, not just the church, but religious leaders have been very much instrumental in getting us to where we are right now. At 9 o'clock, we'll be speaking to Archbishop Martin Kivuva of the Catholic Archdiocese of Mombasa. And yesterday, as religious leaders, they came together and they issued a statement giving us scorecard on the Constitution implementation process, what the Constitution has delivered for us. We'll be discussing with him on that. Packed show, so keep it right here on Spice FM. Let's start from the beginning. This clamor for a new constitution, you know, going back into the late 80s, into the repealing of Section 2A, into having new multi-party elections and having multi-party in the country, coming up to the IPPG of 1997, where now it was about electoral reforms. It was all a journey that had begun, and the clamor to have a new constitution was, like you say, building up speed.
That journey hasn't actually stopped. You know, with every era, it gathers momentum, and it comes with new demands.
Yep.
But even at independence and immediately after, there were issues about the Constitution. There have always been issues about the Constitution.
Yep.
Multipartism would never have been a discussion if we ourselves hadn't clawed back time and gone back to a one-party state. But the reality was there we were, so we needed to get back to where we had been previously. Now, the thing about freedom is you get freedom and you understand just the scope that is available to you, you then demand more.
Yep.
Yes. And it was perceived that so long as we had this constitution that we had from independence, nothing was ever really going to change fundamentally. Nothing. So the understanding was, let's get a new constitution.
With the formation of the Yashpal Gai Commission, I think there was now this kind of feeling around the country that finally we are on the road and the path towards attaining a new constitution.
Yes, and something that we are the ones who have crafted as opposed to something which was handed over to us. And why Yashpal Gai? Because he's one of Kenya's most renowned sons. When you talk about constitutions around the world, whether it is South Africa, whether it is in the Far East, there are very few people who I think have participated in the formation and the drafting and creating of constitutions on this planet as much as Yashpal Gai. He was eminent, he was known, and at that point in time, he was acceptable.
So it was masterstroke for Moi to actually get in and accept to appoint Yashpal Gai.
Yes.
And also, good for Yashpal Guy to come in and say, no. Let's bring everybody on board. Let's bring the Fungamano side also. Let's bring everybody on board so we can have this journey going together. So they went around the country collecting views. And we want now to talk to Professor P.L. Lumumba to hear when they were going around the country, the views that they were collecting. They came up with the CKRC report, went to the Bomas of Kenya. There was an entire constitutional conference in Bomas, brought in delegates from around the country. I mean, we were moving on very, very well until we weren't. Professor P.L. Lumumba, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning and welcome to the Situation Room. In the room, you have me, Eric Latiff, Nduh Okoh, and C.T. Muga.
Yes.
So, Prof, let's look back at the journey and the time for CKRC and the work that the CKRC did. And just like you've heard us introduce, this was a time when people felt around the country that finally we have a journey that we are all participating in writing a new constitution. And when the CKRC was going around the country, just take us through what the kind of vibe that you were getting around the country at the time.
Let me begin my conversation from the CKRC. One could have gone a little bit earlier, but I'll not do that. I begin at a time when the two parallel processes have been put together under the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission Act, Chapter 3A of the Laws of Kenya. And our mandate was first to identify what it is that Kenyans wanted. And if you look at our records and in the archives, you'll be able to see the kind of question that we posed. Kenyans had indicated that they wanted a new dispensation, and therefore we had to interpret that. That was the first act of the CKRC. What do Kenyans want? And we did indicate, number one, that Kenyans wanted a good Bill of Rights. Kenyans wanted the question of land dealt with. Kenyans wanted representation to be improved. Kenyans wanted a government that was not too centralized. Kenyans wanted the marginalized community to be mainstreamed. And they wanted a chief executive who was not overbearing, having come from an administration of Jomo Kenyatta and Daniel Arap Moi, who were imperial presidents. And therefore, we simplified the issue and visited the then 210 constituencies, apart from other engagements which we had with specialized groups. And of course, we were doing this at a time when there was great reluctance on the part of President Moi, because President Moi did not believe that you needed a new constitutional dispensation. And that was not only President Moi. There were individuals within his administration who did not believe, even the younger ones. I remember debating Julius Sunkuli, who was then a far powerful minister in the Moi administration. He did not believe that we needed a new constitution of dispensation. Even the current deputy president did not believe so, and quite a number of them. But ultimately, we collected the views of the people of Kenya, interpreted them, and delivered a constitution and a report. In fact, commentators will tell you that there is not a process of constitution making in modern constitution making that has been documented like the Kenyan constitution under the CKRC. So what did we do? The Kenyans told us we want a president who is not overbearing. Therefore, we made recommendations, which we borrowed quite a bit also from what the people told us, and benchmarked. We said, let us have a president and a deputy president and a prime minister who will be present in parliament. Let us have ministers and let us have them in a limited number. We looked at the question of land and we knew that there were historical injustices. There were people like the Ogiek, people like the Nubians in Kibra, people like the Wata, people like the Dashnach. We made recommendations relating to land, and that is the genesis of the National Land Commission. The Bill of Rights, we said we ought to improve it, and we improved it in a manner that was then corresponding with the UDHR of 1948 and the Charter of the UN of 1945 and the African Convention on People's Rights. And we have a very good Bill of Rights. We then went into the area of representation. And this is the area where we said, how do we deal with women who are historically marginalized? We recommended proportional representation and told Parliament then, don't increase constituencies from 210 to the 290. They did not listen to us. We then, of course, looked at devolution and recognized that we did not want to go full hog federal or confederal. We simply wanted to devolve so that financial semi-autonomy is enjoyed by the region. But we said we don't want devolved units, and Kenyans told us we don't want devolved units which are ethnically pure, and we want them viable. We recommended 14 regions. The parliamentarians later gave us 47, which are troublesome. The judiciary, we wanted an independent judiciary. And of course, we created and expanded the JSC and constitution. Of course, we also looked at ethics and corruption, and we recommended that we have a body, we have an ombudsman, and all those things are there in the constitution. It is that report that became the basis of discussion at the Bomas of Kenya, which we convened on the 27th day of October, the year 2002. And I remember sitting at the headquarters of the CKRC at KCB building at about 2 a.m. in the night when the draft had not been released. And I hear it being reported, President Moi saying, hiyo katiba ni mbaya, inasema wanaume waoe wanaume. Of course, it was completely untrue. And President Moi then refused to give his views on the ground that we're requesting his views was an afterthought.
Yeah.
And he had a master stroke. He then, knowing that members of parliament would be the delegates, and knowing that we had convened at the Bomas of Kenya, what he did was to dissolve parliament on the 27th day of October. And when he dissolved parliament, we had hired police officers to guard us there. I went there myself as the secretary, and on the 28th, the police barred me from entering the place. And the following day, Swiswila Amos Wako, who was the Attorney General of the Republic, issued a long statement, which was self-serving, saying that we could not now have a conference because
Don't have delegates.
there were no delegates.
Of course.
And they said, but the government was still committed to the entire process. We had even attempted at that time to extend the life of parliament. We suggested that the life of parliament be extended because that was indeed a constitutional moment. But the opposition at that time, led by Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga, said not even a day more because they thought they would win the elections. And of course, ultimately,
They won the election.
quickly put together a NAC, then campaigned on the basis that they would deliver the constitution within 100 days.
Just to hold you there, for a bit, you've mentioned something that is important here. So you went around the country, 210 constituencies, picked views from everybody but the president. Why?
Yeah, correct. The president refused.
So you approached him and he said, I'm not going to give my views because you're suggesting that men should marry men.
This is the way it happened, and I've written a book about it. First of all, we of course went through the usual protocol, and the president was in Mombasa, and we said that we would take his views from Mombasa. Then he sent word that because we had taken him for granted and we were collecting his views at the last minute, he would not give his views. But remember that KANU, as a party, had given its views. So when he said that, of course, we did not worry. And during that process, we are also fighting other battles. There were court cases. The judges, led by Bernard Chunga, the Chief Justice, had himself sued us, and we were cited for contempt, and we were meant to go to jail. But I think the environment was such that you couldn't jail us. And we said we were prepared to go to jail. So many things will happen. But to answer your question directly, President Moi refused to give his views.
Let's now fast track then to the elections happened in December 2002. We have a new government coming into office, and President Mwai Kibaki, when he was being sworn in at Uhuru Park, he promises that he's going to deliver the constitution within 100 days.
Oh, yes, he
and
did.
then, so from this point, then with the new administration, the Bomas conference had to be reconvened, or let's
To
just
be
say
reconvened.
to be reconvened. But the first initial time, the delegates were only going to be members of parliament. At what point did this change to include
No.
other delegates?
That is not correct. The delegates were going to be drawn from different sectors
I see.
of the society, but the bulk of them were parliamentarians.
Well, the 210
There were
MPs.
210 of them. But
Okay.
all sectors were to be represented, 629 delegates.
Okay. Did you
Yes.
notice that there was a change by the time you were convening now the Bombers Conference under the NAC administration?
Oh, yeah, of course. John Njoroge Mishuki was very explicit. He told us that, in fact, we never wanted a new constitution. We just wanted to remove Moi. That is what John Njoroge Mishuki said. We never wanted a new constitution. We simply wanted to remove Moi. Now that he is not there, why should we even bother about a new constitution?
Well, how did
But
you
of
feel
course,
about that, if I can ask, based on the work
No,
that had been? I mean, did it give an indication of what others may have been feeling vis-a-vis what Kenyans felt?
Oh, the political class, particularly the ones who had now won the election, were quite comfortable with that old constitution. It was very annoying, and I think our anger was expressed very, very clearly, and there was indeed an apparent attempt to scuttle the process. So that you can see when we convened at Bomas, it was on the 30th day of April, the year 2003. We had wanted to convene in the month of January, but there was stalling and there was a lot of pushing and pulling and pushing. We were being starved of funds and many things were happening. Our own commissioners, some elements within the commission were already recruited by the new administration. I'll not name them, but I've named them in my book. Some of them are senior government officials now, but they have been recruited by the new administration. The then Minister for Justice, who is now the governor of Meru, Murungi Kiraitu, was very active in this regard in trying to ensure that there were recruits within our ranks. So there was division even within the commission at that time.
Professor
But there was
Muga,
few.
Professor,
Yes.
are you saying that what was then voiced by Mr. John Mishuki was genuinely representative of the views of those who are in power?
Oh, yeah, some of them.
Do we have examples of people who perhaps didn't share that view?
Oh, there were quite a number. At least remember that the NAC group was also put together very quickly so that it was a marriage of convenience. There were those who took the view that we needed a new constitutional order, those who are in the church and the civil society. In the political class, people like Raila Odinga took the view that we needed a new constitution. Kalonzo Musyoka was not quite clear, said one thing one day, another the same day, but I'm sure he'll say that he wanted a new constitutional order. So there were those within the political class who wanted a new constitutional dispensation, but there were those, particularly those allied to President Mwai Kibaki. They were clear. Christopher Murungaru but it was quite clear that you did not need a new constitution, and quite a number of them.
You know, we're going into a break, but I want to ask this question, which you can answer after the break. Can we then say that what you've just described actually never went away? That even now, many of the problems we have that relate to the Constitution are like a carryover from the situation that you've just described?
Oh, that is correct. And I'll answer it properly.
Let's take a break. Professor P.L.O. Lumumba was the secretary and the CEO of the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, the Yashpal Guy Commission. He was also the chief rapporteur at the Bomas Constitutional Conference. We are talking about the journey towards our constitution, and then we'll end, of course, the conversation with Professor Lumumba looking at the current constitution, looking whether the current constitution has delivered that promise that the people were yearning for, what the people were dreaming of when CKRC was going around the country collecting views and people expressing themselves. Keep it right here. This is a Situation Room. Broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Home. It's now 23 minutes after 7. We'll be back shortly.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
It's mostly cloudy in Nairobi at 15. We'll see highs of 24 today. Looking into Njeri at 14 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions opening up into rain later with highs of 23 and lows of 14. Sunny conditions in Nakuru at 12 currently. It's going to turn into rain conditions later, highs of 24 and lows of 12. Eldoret, sunny conditions as well at 12 degrees. It'll be a rainy afternoon, however, going to highs of 21. It's partly cloudy in Kisumu, beg your pardon, at 15, going highs to 28 and coming down to lows of 14. Kakamega will be sunny at 15 degrees today, highs of 26 and lows of 14 with a chance of rain not too far from now. It's already started drizzling in Mombasa, 24 degrees currently, going to highs of 28, and the rain is likely to continue well into Friday. Partly cloudy conditions in Malindi at 25, highs of 28 and lows of 24. It's partly cloudy in Kampala at 18 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 17, with showers expected later. Dar es Salaam is 23 degrees and partly cloudy this morning, going to highs of 29 and lows of 21. In Joburg, clear skies at 11 degrees, cloudy conditions later, to a high of 22 and lows of 10. And finally for now, in Lagos, 24 degrees is partly cloudy, rain expected later with highs of 29 and lows of 23.
Traffic.
All right, it's jamming up on Thika Road. Be careful when driving, guys. We know the visibility is a lot better this morning, but traffic is piling up, and that's getting out towards the city right around the Muthaiga overpass and then getting to the Pangani underpass as it leads you to the Globe Cinema roundabout. So, I need to take it easy there as the traffic continues to pile up. On Mombasa Road, then heading towards the CBD, you should be fine. Not too much of an issue. You're not going to have to sit in traffic for too long this morning, thank goodness. And then coming out of Westlands, coming off of Langata Road, coming off of Gong Road as well, as you meet the respective roundabouts, you should be fine. Not too much traffic this morning, so it's going to be a good Thursday. Yes, don't forget, you can get in touch. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Let us know if you might get stuck, or if you have an alternate route that people can use where there's absolutely no traffic. It would help.
Broadcasting every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. This is Kenya's only morning talk show that looks at matters that affect you from a local perspective, regional and international perspective. In the room this morning is Eric Latiff, Nduh Okoh, CT Muga. Joining us on the line is Professor PLO Lumumba. And PLO Lumumba was the Secretary and CEO of the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission. We were talking about the journey towards the new constitution. And CT, before we went to the break, you asked the professor a question.
And he actually responded in a word, yes. But where I was going with the question was actually this. If those who are now in power, the president as his deputy, represent the views of those who perhaps, maybe partially, who are not for the constitution, how really can we expect that this constitution will actually achieve what was intended to achieve?
The line is not as clear as it should be. I hope you'll hear me.
We hear you.
It must be understood that there are quite a number of people, not very many, but quite a number of people, even within the current administration, who are reluctant Democrats. And they are sitting at the table of constitutional implementation not because they are enthusiastic about it, but because they are compelled. And it's therefore important to note, particularly when you see the epic fights about devolution, there are people who still believe that the more centralized the government, the more powerful they are, the more they control the knife and the yam, the more it is good for them in terms of wielding power. And that is why you see that implementation of the Constitution has not been done in a very enthusiastic manner. And there are also bureaucrats within government, not only politicians. Bureaucrats, look at the entire provincial administration as you knew it. One of the things we said in the Constitution is that we should scrap provincial administration. It is still alive and well in all its splendor through county commissioners. So they undermine sometimes the implementation process in the area of devolution. I think that is part of the problem that we have in this Constitution. We have people who came out of Egypt, but Egypt still dwells in them.
We're at a time where now amendments are being spoken of on one side. And on the other side, there's the call to say, many parts of this Constitution have not been implemented, just as you've given, way to now. What is your thought on that? Already go ahead and amend something that has not been lived out throughout all its elements and factors. What are your thoughts about that?
First of all, let us understand that the Constitution that we ended up with, the 2010 Constitution, was a constitution that came after the 2007-2008 post-electoral violence. And this constitution was in many ways a ceasefire document between the elements led by Mr. Raila Odinga and then President Kibaki. So there are elements within that constitution which were introduced. For example, I've never understood why we ended up with 47 counties. I've never understood how we ended up with a presidential system. I've never understood how we created a Senate, which is not an upper house. I've never understood why you say that there should be 1/3 representation of women, yet the architecture of the Constitution does not allow it. There are many things that you find in that Constitution, and I heard it being said by those who are leading the Yes campaign, that let's just accept this Constitution, we'll deal with the problems a little later. So there is a sense in which there are things within the Constitution that require cleaning up. But that is not to take away the fact that it ought to have been implemented a lot more robustly and that it ought, therefore, to have had greater impact. But to answer your question directly, after the 2017 election again, remember after the handshake between President Kibaki and Mr. Raila Odinga, and remember Mr. Raila Odinga he had a handshake with Moi, he had a handshake with Kibaki, and now the handshake with Mr. Uhuru, President Uhuru Kenyatta. And there are people who say, and I agree with them to a certain extent, that the BVI was an afterthought, essentially a Trojan horse by Mr. Odinga and his acolytes to get into power. I don't buy into that. I think that the BVI, whether it's an afterthought or a Trojan horse, gives us an opportunity to examine some of the elements in the Constitution that need attention. That, I think, is a legitimate thing. So while there are things that are implementable, there are things that are not implementable because of the architecture of the Constitution. Look at the spat about revenue allocation.
Yep.
It is simply because the relationship between the House, the National Assembly, and the Senate, and the Commission of Revenue Allocation is not clear. But if there was clarity, we would not have this kind of conflict. So there is reason to examine the current Constitution. And people do not know. In the year 2016, the government did order or instruct the then Auditor General, Mr. Nduh Okoh, to audit the Constitution. And there is a whole report that talks about that audit. I remember participating in that audit as a consultant with my friend David Lee. And there are many recommendations that were made. Look at, for example, the cost of governance in Kenya. Look at the devolution. Look at the entire architecture and the cost of governance. And I think that this is an opportunity to examine those things. But I suspect, reading from the first BBI report, that the political class, once again, is much more interested in amending things that will allow them to cobble political alliances.
Yeah.
And that is what we should guard against. We should ensure that if we are making amendments, we are not making those amendments to meet short-term political interests of certain elements within the political class, but using it to clean up the constitution for posterity. We must be on guard because politicians are the ones who consistently have messed up this constitutional process, consistently. And this, I must say, I've always wanted an opportunity to say, Amos Wako disappoints me because he has been present at every stage of constitution making. And it appears that he doesn't remind those with whom he sits that this was the original cause. Even right now, he's in the BBI. And I would want the BBI to benefit from the history that he has. But somehow, and I must say this, somehow, he falls short. And I've said it in my book, that if Amos Wako was a little bit more enthusiastic, because God has given him the opportunity to be the constant factor, Kenya would have had a better constitution. I do not know whether I'm being harsh to Amos, but God has given him that opportunity. And somehow
what would you like to see him do differently? Like you've said, yes, he's participated throughout the process. Now he's even involved in the BBI. He's one of the members of the BBI task force. What would you like to see Amos Wako do differently?
To remember that when we made the CKRC draft, he was there. He was a member of the CKRC, and he remembers what Kenyans told us about executive, what Kenyans told about devolution, what Kenyans told us about representation, that he remains faithful to that true north. And the question why I'm saying that he disappoints me a little is because he's the very same who was a delegate at Bomas of Kenya when the draft had been taken from Bomas, went out with another group of politicians in Kilifi, and in Kilifi they changed the original draft, and once again he was the Attorney General when we had this draft in the year 2010, and once again it was changed, and once again he's in BBI. Perhaps, let me be charitable to him, perhaps he tells them and they don't listen. Perhaps.
So let's go back actually into that acrimony of the Bomas Constitutional Conference between 2003 and 2005 and look at what was happening then. So you've alluded to the fact that after the election, some members of the political class wanted to steer clear of the journey towards a new constitution. Others had their own personal agenda, but also we had other delegates who represented other interests at Bomas. Why was it so acrimonious? Up to a point where we had a walkout.
Led by the Honorable Murungi Kiraitu.
Yes.
They said that the government actually walked out. And this is the reason why they walked out. When we were doing the constitution and we made our presentation on devolution, the delegates thought that we should re-examine it again. And we prepared a separate draft on devolution and culture. And we had something that was called a consensus group, which was headed by Bishop Sulumeti. On the day that we presented our report, Christopher Murungaru, who was then a minister in the office of the president, came with another document saying that we did not need devolution, we only needed to improve provincial administration. Mm-hmm. The delegates rejected that document. And then those who are in government said, if you can't listen to government, we are not going to participate. So they walked out. And when they walked out, we said that we were still quarried, and we continued. The religious sector was still there. The civil society was there. Institutions of higher learning were there. Elements of the political class in the opposition were still there. And therefore, despite the fact that they stayed away, we were able to continue. But what they did was to then sponsor cases in court. And one of the cases was to require that whatever came out of the Bomas of Kenya would be subjected to a referendum. Remember, at that time, it was assumed that after Bomas of Kenya, the parliament would sit as a constituent assembly and adopt the constitution without the need for a referendum because the people have given their ways, their views. So the entire element of a referendum was then ordered in a suit that was filed by the Reverend Njoya and others, and Justice Ringera ruled that a constitution could only be adopted if there is a referendum and not adoption by a parliament constituting itself into a constituent assembly.
But, Prof, looking back at that moment when a section of delegates walked out and there's what you say, a majority remained in the House, but looking at the spirit of even the Bishop Sulumeti committee, which was looking at consensus building, do you think it was the right thing for you to then go ahead and call for a vote for adoption of the draft by those that were left in the House? Looking back.
It was the right thing. Remember, as I told you, the late John Njoroge Mishuki had told us, we do not need a constitution. What we wanted was to remove Moi. So you could see that this was carefully choreographed. The choreography was that if we walked away, the entire process is scuttled. But remember that the people of Kenya had spoken. So you cannot surrender to a few individuals who, for unknown reason, which I must say must have been selfish, simply tried to move out so that they scuttled the process. The majority of Kenyans were there, and in any event, those who moved out were the minority. They voted with their feet, and they had their lackeys in the conference. Despite the fact that physically they had moved, it is right to say that they still had representation within the conference, and they also had representation in our own commission. They had recruited elements within our own commission. And in my book, if you read it, there was a dinner which was organized by Murungi Kiraitu for some of our commissioners. And the instruction was to torpedo the process and to pass a vote of no confidence. In fact, there was an attempt to pass a vote of no confidence on Yash Gai and myself, because they deemed that we were part of the problem in wanting the process to go on. And you have to read my book. I think it's the only book that has been written that speaks blow by blow how we went through the process. Initially released as the postponed promise and now republished as swearing by Kenya.
I hear you say all of this, and would I be right in saying then, with the final document as it came out and with what would hope would govern Kenyans for the future, were you satisfied with what came out? Through all of this process and all of this, the attempted scuttling in and out, were you satisfied with what came out that would serve as a document for years to come?
Commentators, both locally and abroad, have said that the draft that was generated at the Bomas of Kenya, which was a reflection of the majority of Kenyans, is one of the best draft constitutions the world has ever seen. There is no perfect constitution, but I would want you to read both academic articles and other contributions across the world. In fact, in Sweden, they have established a place where the Kenyan constitution process is showcased as the most consultative process in modern constitution making. It was a reflection of the views of the people of Kenya. And often you see politicians now saying, let us go back to the Boma draft. But as I've said, the caveat is there is no perfect constitution.
But are you satisfied with what came out?
No, thoroughly satisfied.
Why?
Because it reflected the views of the people of Kenya, and it would have improved governance. Because why do we make constitutions? Constitutions is a contract between the governors and the governed among themselves. When I say I'm satisfied, number one, because it addressed critical issues of governance. The question of an executive who is answerable to the people, a legislature that is representative of all shades of opinion, including marginalized communities and historically oppressed people like women. In the area of corruption, it dealt with the question of ethics. Historically, land was a problem. It dealt with that. It dealt with issues of independence of the judiciary. It dealt with the economy of the country in terms of devolution, ensuring that we remain a heterogeneous country, but one that is organized in a manner where resources are efficiently deployed. We only suggested 14 regions, not these ethnically pure 47 burdensome counties, which is eating our resources and undermining development. So that document was a document that reflected the views of the people of Kenya. Remember, we were only midwives. We did not create a constitution. We midwifed what Kenyans said, and a midwife is neither the father nor the mother nor the child. He simply facilitates.
If we look at, let me rephrase what I'm saying. Would I be right in suggesting that what I hear you say is that even as we celebrate 10 years of the promulgation of our constitution, there is a very slim chance that we will actually get to implement this constitution fully?
Let me be candid with you. There are certain elements within the Kenyan political class who, as long as they are alive and active in Kenyan politics, you'll always have a problem with constitutional implementation, because their interest is to have a document that addresses their short-term political interests. But history has demonstrated, not only here, that it is the vigilance of the people and critical sectors, including you, the media. It is the vigilance. Democracy is about vigilance. If the people are not vigilant, then it is in the nature of politicians to want to shortchange the people, because power concentrated in a few hands is very sweet to those fellows. So I can tell you that vigilance of the population is what will ensure proper and effective implementation of the Constitution.
How do we unshackle ourselves from this political class? Because, Prof, this is a social contract between the populace, the citizens, and the political class. Like you've said, Bombers of Kenya was people-driven. Then it was scuttled by some elements in the political class. We had the Kilifi draft. Then we had the Committee of Experts draft, which went to a political negotiation forum in Naivasha, where a number of things were also amended from the initial harmonized draft constitution. How do we, even as we say that we want to retain and maintain our vigilance, how do we overcome this?
We are not the first country to do this. If you have political will is very important. If you look at the constitutional dispensation in the neighborhood, look at the Ugandan constitution of 1995 when the NRM leadership wanted to change the constitution. Because there was political will, it was easy to change it. Look at the Ethiopian constitution of 1984, political will. Look at the Rwandese constitution, political will. But in Kenya, the problem is that one part of the Kenyan political culture is that we have too many carryovers from past regimes, and therefore their political culture has never changed. Their political DNA never changes. And the only way to do is to force their hand. And forcing their hand is making demands. And I see the religious sector doing that. When the religious sector issues this audit, that is the kind of demand that you need. When the civil society does that, when different sectors of the economy and the society apply this pressure, that is the only way in which you force political will. Political will in Kenya is not very easy to enforce, partly because of the manner in which we organize our politics, complete with low voltage ethnic warlords and kingpins. When you have politics being run on the basis of ethnic warlordism, then it is not very easy to do things that are really Kenyan. So until the day that we deal with that, and I commend to you a book written by Koigi Wawa Mwere, Towards Genocide in Kenya, the Curse of Negative Ethnicity, in which he says that as long as Kenyans are beholden to these political ethnic kingpins, we can never do something that is in the best interest of Kenya in its corporate sense. And you'll begin to see when the BVI comes, you'll hear Luo elders have said this, Kikuyu elders have said, Luhya elders have said, Kisi elders have said. Nobody will be talking about Kenya, very few. Yep. And even when they do so, they will not be heard, because even the print media has also been wedded to this ethnic jaundiced approach to handling of national affairs.
How does that change then? Because we this has been something that has been there for eternity. And if we're saying that certain things need to change, political will then needs to become something. We're saying that, ethnicity or the whole war around ethnic and tribal discussions needs to change. How does then that change?
Perhaps the word eternity that you have used is hyperbolic. But the truth is that we have only been a nation for slightly over 50 years. So it is, in terms of the life of a nation, that is very short. So I'm myself happy that you are even facilitating this kind of conversation. It is these kinds of conversation, and it is lone voices such as yours and mine who remain unpopular at these critical masses that will, in the fullness of time, begin to inform and change political processes. So don't be worried, because sometimes it sounds very lonely and it sounds quite unfruitful. But I believe that we are beginning to hear this conversation. I read a lot of writing on the BBI, those who oppose it, those who don't oppose it. But the fact that we are bringing these things on the table, the politicians are listening. Even when we irritate them, they are listening. And the beauty of the law is that it does not change those who are evil, but it restrains them. And once they are restrained and they get used to behaving well, then it forms their habits. And once the habits are properly situated and located, then it becomes their character. And when that happens, then they begin to change. So when I'm talking about the life of a nation, I'm no longer thinking about my lifetime. I'm thinking about intergenerational responsibility. And I can see Kenya is beginning to move in that direction.
Well, thank you very much, Prof, for speaking to us. As we conclude the conversation, I'd like to ask your comment on what the president said yesterday. He says, 10 years later, the moment to improve on the Constitution is now. We must not succumb to the paralysis of constitutional rigidity. What do you say to that? Is this the time?
There is merit in what he says, to the extent that we created and gave unto ourselves a constitution that had been mutilated by the political class. Perhaps now it is the time to correct those wrongs. So I agree with him to that extent. But I don't agree with the president when he says that this is a constitutional moment. That is a misuse of the word constitutional moment. I think we only have an opportunity to right the wrongs. And I accept when in correcting those wrongs, we must do it in order to secure the interest of the nation for this generation and generation yet to be born. But I once again want to reiterate, let us be vigilant. Let us watch the politicians. Let them not use this opportunity. And I suspect one of the things, and I do not know what is in the bombers of Kenya, you will possibly see an expanded executive. And the reason for the expanded executive will possibly to allow the political class to cobble together an ethnic group so that they can compete to seek ethnic votes. So you may see president, deputy president, prime minister, deputy prime minister, two deputy prime ministers, ministers drawn from parliament so that you can make promises before the election. If they bring such things, we should call them out of order and tell them we want devolution, we want reduction of things that consume money that should go into development. Vigilance, 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 because our politicians are very short-sighted, some of them.
Thank you very much, Professor PLO Lumumba, former Secretary of the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission. Asante sana for joining us, and we wish you a good day today as we celebrate these 10 days.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Time to take another quick break right here on Spice FM. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM, online on www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as on KTN Home. We'll be back in the next hour, 8 to 9. We'll be speaking with Martha Karua, the party leader of NARC Kenya. She was the Justice Minister in the Republic of Kenya between 2006 and 2009. So after the Bombers draft, which never found its way to a referendum or anywhere else after Bombers, we had the Kilifi draft in going to a referendum. Then we had the post-election violence of 2007. We had the Peace and Reconciliation Accord, which gave a fresh drive and fresh impetus to redoing the Constitution. Martha Karua was the Justice Minister then, which she oversaw the formation of the Committee of Experts and other agenda for commission. So we'll be speaking to her on that journey, on what was happening, the intrigues surrounding this attempt to revive the journey towards a new constitution, and what actually now we ended up having as the Constitution of Kenya 2010. 7 minutes to 8 o'clock. We'll be back shortly.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Do you know the operations of the Kenya Ports Authority? Would you like to know? There's an information portal that has been established by the Kenya Ports Authority, and this is called Captain Cargo, Kargo. If you just go to the KPA website, kpa.co.ke/Captain Kargo, you'll land on this portal, which gives you a lot of information. Today, we are looking at some of these vessel services that are actually, the information is contained in the portal, which informs you what the KPA does when it comes to handling of vessels.
Sure. So you get to the point whereby the vessel, in or outbound, then gives a call and you get a vessel control number. Now, after that has happened, a notification details used to update a 14 days list of your vessel arrives. So you know what is going to be happening at any one point in time. So for ships on a maiden call, the shipping agent, and maiden call being your first, the shipping agent sends the vessel definition to KPA for the ship to be defined. So you know what is coming in, you know what it's carrying, you know its port of exit, and then you know its port of entry. Your shipping agent, who does all of this stuff for you, lodges an impending arrival notice, and the details then are automatically mapped to the system. Now, this system is called the Katos, or the Katos, but everything is automatically uploaded. So you're able to see all this information in real time, and this is online as well. So this is what the vessel then confirms its arrival via phone, or to the system, or to the KPA harbor master. So all of this information, you're aware of what's happening, where the ship is, when it's supposed to arrive, when it would dock, and all of this information is available on the portal of Captain Cargo.
www.kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo. Good morning. 4 minutes to 8.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
So that journey towards the Constitution, especially getting through the intrigues of the Bombers of Kenya and what happened after the Bombers of Kenya. CT, do you still believe that the Bombers was the best draft that we never had?
Given that I'm not a legal expert, and if I'm to believe the energy that I saw being put into it, and what came out, and comments and articles that I have read regarding that particular draft, we really put our best foot forward on that one. What was presented, one, I think the professor has actually encapsulated it very well. It represented an honest view of what the Kenyans wanted. And that really was what the Constitution was supposed to be. But what to me is of significance is this. There will always be vested interests that don't cater for any consideration for the larger public. They will talk nice, they will talk development, they'll say things that sound like there is nothing other than the interest of the Mwananchi that is actually at the focus of their minds, but the reality is completely different. And I think that they were smart enough to understand that this particular draft was not going to assist in their endeavors. So the thing to do is you ensure that it is a weakened draft, a draft that gives you wriggling,
All dry.
Both.
room.
But is it also possible that there were other elements who were also trying to infuse elements into the constitution to serve their own interests in the future? So basically, what Wanjiko had said, what Wanjiko had told Professor Yashpal Gai on the ground, got to Bomas, and it was infiltrated by political class who were trying to bring in their own issues.
Take, for instance, what Professor Lumumba mentioned with regards to the type of presidency or leadership that we wanted at the top. The draft suggested very, very clearly President of Parliament, Prime Minister. President of the country with limited powers. What then came out? It's not what they had suggested. Because what people had wanted, they wanted to ensure that you dismantle this all-powerful imperial presidency that Kenya had since independence. All right? But what turned out was we carried on with that imperial presidency for a while.
So it served some purpose as well.
It served some purposes.
Keep
yes.
it right here. In the next hour, we speak to Martha Karua, former Justice Minister and currently the leader of NAR Kenya. We are celebrating the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Good morning, 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, so most parts of Nairobi behaving very well today. Look at Nairobi and the Greater NMA. A section of Uhuru Highway, however, is partially blocked. No public notice, unfortunately. So now that affects Uhuru Highway, and the traffic there is actually bumper to bumper all the way from Nyayo Stadium and headed then into the CBD, out then towards Westlands. Once you get past the University Way roundabout, you should be fine. But just know that as you're approaching that area, a section has been blocked off. You need to divert either towards Valley Road or into the CBD and then out. Sorry about that, guys. We should have told us earlier, but okay. All stops is clear. Survey is jam-packed, however, and Muthaiga is closing up. That's just at the Muthaiga overpass, and that'll give you some traffic there this morning, but then out past the Globe Cinema overpass, you should be fine. So Thika Road is where it's giving us some terrible vibes right now, as well as Uhuru Highway. Thereafter, you should be fine. Spice of MKE, if somewhere else you're blocked, do let us know. At least we'll let others know, and we can keep it moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your
It's
day.
2.5 minutes after 8 o'clock. Thank you very much for tuning in to The Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Home, as well as on www.spicefm.co.ke and Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. As we begin this hour, let's hear today's proverb. CT?
A man with a running stomach, or should we say diarrhea, will not require anyone to give them directions to the door.
A man with diarrhea will not require anyone to give them directions to the door.
No, they won't. It's a condition that requires a certain element of urgency when it comes to movement.
You will find the door.
Put it this way, you will certainly find the door.
All right.
Yes.
Continuing the conversation around the Constitution, today being the 27th day of August 2020. It's 10 years today since the promulgation of the Constitution 10 years ago. And remember, in the previous hour, we were speaking with Professor PLO Lumumba, who was the former secretary of the CKRC. Now let's speak to the person who was the Justice Minister in the second trial at this Constitution. Now, let's just call it the second trial. Maybe that must have been like the seventh trial, but let's just say in this new push to have a new Constitution. Martha Karua joins us on the line. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room. It's good to
all.
have you again.
Good morning.
Morning, and thank you for having me.
So, Ms. Karua, we were looking at the journey through, the Bomas draft, what happened in Bomas. Then, of course, we know what happened after that. 2005 referendum, the vote no carries the day. The no vote carries the day. And then we have the 2007 general election. We know the acrimony that followed that, the peace and reconciliation that came after that. And you are Justice Minister since 2006. When we got now into the new government, the Grand Coalition government, you were Justice Minister, and there was a fresh push to now have the new constitution at least enacted. One thing that we all know is that there was a law that was passed in Parliament that was, like self-executing, definite timelines. This thing of promising a constitution with no deadline in place was not the case this particular time. Why was that?
I think we realized that there were too many hurdles on the way, too many people not wanting the Constitution, pretending to want it, but lying in wait to sabotage. So I and the team at the Ministry of Justice had to think of an innovative law that is self-propelling, that has strict timelines. We wanted the Constitution done in 1 year. That was the agreement in the Grand Coalition government. Mm-hmm. I was chairing the team of 6 that were in Serena to craft the necessary laws on behalf of the coalition government. But credit goes to the team in the Ministry of Justice at that time. They helped craft that law that enabled us to keep the timelines and to complete the constitutional journey, the unfinished business, within 1 year.
Even as you made this push, Madam Mheshimiwa, were you of the understanding that this particular draft that was being pushed forward was the best draft that we could have had at the time?
The draft that was being pushed was a draft that we were to agree on. The 1 year was time to negotiate what to put into the Constitution. We had as materials the Bomas draft, the Wako draft, and all the views that Kenyans had given, which had already been collated. So we had the opportunity also for Kenyans to give additional views on what they wanted. And that's exactly what happened within that 1 year. All the views that Kenyans had from inside were received. The materials that previously had been gathered were looked into, and a draft was put forward by the committee of experts.
As you and your team were working on this at the Justice Ministry and looking at, we want to have a new constitution, at least we want to get to a point where the people are voting for a new constitution within a year, was there any consideration given that perhaps then what we should do is look at what the work that had been done at Bomas of Kenya and just take it to the people?
No, you see, this constitution push was people driven from day one. So there was no case of experts sitting and deciding what to give the people. You allow the people to give any additional views they have, to make any other additional comments, and together with the previous materials, you now come up with a draft, which again is subjected to a referendum for the people to authorize, and that's exactly what happened. So I would like Kenyans to remember that this constitution was a negotiated document. The journey was 20 years plus, and at every stage of the way, people had a say. constitution making is not about top leadership deciding what is good for the nation. It's about the nation deciding for itself, the citizens playing a role in shaping their destiny. And that's exactly what was done in the constitution making leading up to the 2010 constitution.
How did your role, Martha, at that point as Justice Minister contribute to this? And do you think that had you not pushed in the manner in which you did, within that year, this constitution would not have been birthed?
My role was to be a team leader, because we must rely always on the wealth of human resources and other resources that we have. So I sat down with my team and I relied on their expertise. We put our heads together and we proposed a draft to the government. It was accepted and it was tabled in Parliament, and the rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take people back to that journey. Sorry, let's just take people. There are some people who may have forgotten that there were three documents here that we're talking about. We're talking about the Bomas draft, then we're talking about the Kilifi draft, and then we ended up with a harmonized draft constitution of the Committee of Experts. So just take us through this journey when now the Grand Coalition government is in place, and the strategy that you deployed on how we are going to end up with a draft for the constitution in 2010 August.
One, as I've said before, we were conscious that this journey is the people's journey. It's not the journey of the top leadership. We were aware that we cannot ignore the previous work leading up to the Bomas draft. A lot of effort had been put in by Kenyans. We also did not want to ignore the 2005 referendum, which had a ratio of, say, 56-44%. We wanted all those things put into perspective and Kenyans given a chance to say what they would want to see in the Constitution so that nobody is locked out. It wasn't a question of saying those who won at the 2005 referendum should carry the day. It's about bringing people together, let them negotiate with hindsight what it is that they want in the Constitution, the kind of nation they want backed by the new constitutional order. And that's what we did. And you remember this was after a Grand Coalition government had been born by the Kofi Annan negotiations. We had learned our lesson that Kenya is shared space for all of us, and anything that is fundamental has to be negotiated, and we have to look for a broad consensus, and that's precisely what we did.
Do you think the mood of the country at that point, because of coming out of the 2007 post-election violence, do you think the mood of the country that now we were in a mode of consensus helped to propel this journey?
Yes, and the fact that there was a Grand Coalition government, we were committed right from the negotiation table to an agenda. And one of the agendas of the Grand Coalition government was to ensure that the constitutional review was complete. So that unity of purpose definitely did help.
Now, looking at the Constitution, and then the Committee of Experts presented the harmonized draft. This was taken through another political process in Naivasha. Just take us through, why did the draft need to go to politicians sitting somewhere in Naivasha to negotiate and look at it?
Within the Review Act, there was space for Parliament to input. And you never can ignore Parliament. Parliament should not be the only driver, but being an institution recognized and an arm of one of the three arms of government, Parliament always has a role. Therefore, the Review Act provided that after the Committee of Experts puts a document together, it will be subjected to a parliamentary process and ultimate parliamentary approval. because you can't take it back to all the Kenyans to see before it's subjected to a referendum. So Naivasha was a legitimate process. And in Naivasha, we did some input to the committee of experts. And basically, what we agreed on Naivasha carried the day, although there are some little things the committee of experts removed. I hear the former chair Nzamba complaining that there are some things we removed at Naivasha. Naivasha was a legitimate process, and we did what we believed was necessary at that time. And in hindsight, I still think what we did was very good, and that is what led to this beautiful document, the 2010 Constitution. The Committee of Experts was proposing regions. It had 14 of them.
Yep.
And as parliamentarians, we thought we were already balkanized. And we thought if we group it into regions, which is basically like the former provinces added, we thought it may lead to further balkanization. And we therefore opted for counties. We also opted not for a federal system, for devolution, but with a unitary state. Also, again, because of the background of balkanization. And the rest is history. That's how the 47 counties were birthed, basically around the old colonial districts, except that we added 2 more counties. And if I remember correctly, that was Vihiga and Lamu, which were not part of the old colonial districts.
When we spoke with the Professor P.L.O. Lumumba in the previous hour, one of the things that he kept wondering is, how did we end up with the 47 instead of even the 14 regions? Because he says that during the Boma's process, one of the things that was coming out was, if you go lower than that, then you are going into tribal. But if you stay at regional, then you're bringing in various tribal groupings that are in the same vicinity as the region, working together to form a government. But now, going into 47, you have gone into uniquely tribal areas. What do you say to that?
We are already there. I do not think we have gone to uniquely tribal areas. Although the districts may have a majority coming from one community, there is a provision that in everything you do, there has to be inclusion, and you have to look at the face of Kenya. You have to look at the composition of the people who live within your boundaries. And remember, this is a unitary state, not a federal system. So I believe that having counties avoided the balkanization that had been brought by our politics. We would now be grouping against one another. But because it is counties, every county is busy minding its business. And I don't think our problem right now is ethnic blocks within the counties. Our problem is mismanagement. So it actually vindicates our thoughts at Naivasha.
But where is the problem with ethnic blocks, really, honestly speaking? Where is the problem? I personally don't see it.
I don't think we see problems. We were seeing problems in ethnic blocks. We were seeing problems in coming together of ethnic groups to lock out others, not for development. And this fear was born out of our balkanization in politics.
But, you know, which system of government would we opt for that would remove it completely? Because it's something, whether we're talking about the historical influence or they're talking about just the reality of our politics, it is how people will move politically. Because what seems implied here is what falls in the category of what you call negative ethnicity, where just by virtue of your birthplace and your background, you will be discriminated against, or you will have an undue advantage. But this need not necessarily be the case, because from where I sit, this current county system that we have actually enables people in whatever groupings they're in to actually have the ability to determine or chart their way forward. That's how I see it.
Yes, we thought, just like I've said, we thought the counties will give that opportunity. And the fact that we took the districts, all districts as counties, and rooted for a unitary state.
Yeah.
The unitary state was a check on any ethnic blocks that tend to lock out anyone else. So the emphasis here is a unitary state. And we actually thought even security cannot be devolved until maybe we reach a place in future where we can trust ourselves and one another. We thought we needed to have security at the national level because we feared that we could end up with county security that ends up like a militia. And you can see as we are, governance, good governance, has not taken root yet. Most of the counties, we are having mismanagement of resources. We are still having neighbors fighting one another. Those were the issues that informed our actions at Naivasha. And we also realized that some of the balkanization has come because of the differentials in development in many of our counties. And we therefore, and I'm proud to have been the one who introduced at Naivasha, Article 104, the Equalization Fund, which I had borrowed from the Canadian Constitution to ensure that we accelerate development in the hitherto marginalized areas so that Kenya can be one in terms of development. It is unfortunate that the Jubilee administration has not, for the 8 years they have been in power, operationalized this fund to the extent of 8 starting infrastructure projects in the marginalized areas to ensure that they are brought to par with the rest of the country. This fund is time-bound. It is for 20 years, and then we review it. We are now into the 10th year without this fund doing anything tangible and without serious money being put into this fund, because infrastructure projects, roads, water, hospitals, and whatever you like, are projects that would cost a lot of money. So putting in 8 years just about 25 billion in this fund is really shows lack of commitment by the Jubilee administration. Failing to utilize it now completely indicates that either they do not appreciate the need for having the country as nearly equal as possible, or they do not realize that proper utilization of this fund will bring or contribute to cohesion.
In fact, that fund now comes squarely at this point when we are having this whole conversation about the third basis formula and looking at the marginalized counties and how the marginalized counties should be working, which brings us to the conversation of the day today, which is a scorecard on the implementation of this constitution 10 years down the road. We'll be looking at the details of each. For example, you've just told us the equalization fund, which is time-bound. Within 20 years, we review and see whether we need to continue giving the counties that amount of money. But so far, they have only received a drop in the ocean of this money. Why is it that we don't see that conversation even coming from the counties that are set to benefit from this equalization fund?
I think there is a disconnect on our understanding of the Constitution. I have seen the push and pull in Senate of a revenue allocation. I have not heard any of the senators wonder where the equalization fund is. The state of being underdeveloped is not a state we wish to remain permanent in parts of this country. And therefore, the biggest question to the government would be, as we fight with the yearly revenue, where is the equalization fund? Why have we not implemented it? And this is something that brings us closer to equality in terms of development. But you will see that it's not just about development that we lack equality. The Constitution provides for inclusion. We were having governments that never had inclusion, were excluding some people, some sectors. We now are moving to inclusion in the new constitution. But we can see that the gender rule has not been implemented, which was meant to bring inclusion of genders in leadership and especially in parliament. We can see that certain things which are supposed to be done to facilitate those living with disabilities to participate in all spheres of life as well as other people have not been done. For instance, in public transport, entrances to buildings, on the pavement, many things. We can see that Article 43, which is supposed to be social and economic rights, which are access to adequate food, access to housing, access to education, to health, to water and sanitation, to name but a few, you can see that the implementation is lacking. The government, to its credit, has instituted cash transfer programs, which are to tackle those inequalities in accessing basic needs. But it's so badly done that when they say that over 70 will receive social support, not everybody is receiving. When they say orphans are receiving, you wonder which orphans, because you will know several who are not receiving. When they talk of people with severe disabilities, we know so many who are not receiving. We need to make this applicable to all those who need it, so that no Kenyan sleeps hungry, no Kenyan suffers without shelter.
Yep.
The social welfare program has to be well planned, and nobody can tell me we cannot afford it. The amount of money, 1/3 of the budget, which goes to mismanagement and outright theft yearly, it's just a matter of planning, a matter of, again, implementing the Constitution to ensure prudent use of resources.
Discussing the implementation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and giving a scorecard is Martha Karua, the party leader of NA Kenya, who was the Justice Minister during the time when the new clamor, the new push for a new constitution was reignited in the Grand Coalition government. Justice Minister between 2006 and 2009. 25 minutes past 8, time to take a quick break. We'll be back shortly. This is a Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Home. We'll be back shortly.
Spice FM, Njeri.
All right, and 26 minutes after 8 o'clock, just to remind you about the portal kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo. This is a new information portal that has been developed by the Kenya Ports Authority in realization of the fact that very many stakeholders would like to understand how the port operations are, how KPA handles its port operations. If you'd like to import or export goods through the ports, any of the ports that are operated by KPA, any of the inland container depot. Now, today we are looking at the vessel services and the procedures that a vessel goes through as it docks at the port. Let's say the port of Mombasa, for instance, before it arrives, what it needs to do, the kind of documentation that goes through it. And so far we are at where Katos does what?
Right, so that you have an automatic map of this vessel and how it's coming through, so you know where it is, where it will dock. You have all that information, so nothing skips you. And it's interesting because everybody in this system is involved, from the pilot at KPA to the hands on ship. Everything concerning your cargo is documented. You know who's handling what at what stage and who's giving what information. We'll be able to give more parts of this so that you know what to expect in the next minutes coming through.
All right, so let's take a look at the weather.
Spice up your life. The weather with Spice FM.
All right, we're still looking at just partly cloudy conditions in Nairobi. 16 degrees. We'll go to a high of 24 today. And in Njeri, 16 as well. Mostly cloudy conditions. It's imminent of rain. And then into Nakuru, sunny conditions at 15 degrees. Highs of 24 and lows of 12 and showers expected later. And in Eldoret, 15 and sunny conditions. Highs of 21 and lows of 11 with showers expected in the afternoon. It's mostly sunny in Kisumu, 22. It'll go to a high of 28 today. Kakamega is sunny at 17. Highs of 26 with a chance of showers not too far from now. It's partly cloudy in Mombasa. Highs of 28. And in Malindi, partly cloudy conditions at 26. Where it was raining earlier in Mombasa, it will do that in Malindi in the afternoon with highs of 29. Let's look into Kampala, where it's partly cloudy at 19 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 18 with showers expected in the afternoon. Patches of fog is what the skies look like in Dar es Salaam at 24, going to highs of 29 and lows of 21. Joburg is mostly sunny at 11, going to highs of 22 and cloudy conditions later. And wrap things up for now in Lagos, where it's partly cloudy at 24, opening up into rain this afternoon with highs of 29 and lows of 23.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Okay, so let's see if it's any different now. Coming off of Figure Road was giving a bit of a headache earlier. Seems to have gotten just a little bit better. However, it's still bumper to bumper right at the Pangani, at the Muthaiga overpass though, and then getting to the Pangani underpass. Now, Mombasa Road, where it was clear up until about 8 o'clock, now is experiencing traffic from the SGR to Cabanas. That's just past the JKIA turnoff. You're going to be there for some time. But then after General Motors, you will be fine as usual. So as you get then to the stadium roundabout at Nyayo, you get to traffic that is bumper to bumper on Uhuru Highway all the way into the CBD. So this is what we're seeing now. If anything does change, we'll let you know. Spice FM KE on Twitter. That's how you can reach us. Let us know if you're stuck. We'll see if we can offer an alternative, or at least people know. At least let people know.
All right, it's 8:30. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, you have CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, Eric Latiff. This Situation Room broadcast on Spice FM and is on KTN Home as well for this hour. And on the line, we are joined by Martha Karua, NARC Kenya Party Leader, Justice Minister 2006 to 2009. She is also somebody who really advocates for social justice. She fights for all these things. And Mheshimiwa, let's look at now the implementation of this constitution since 27th of August 2010 to now, 10 years later. Giving a scorecard on the implementation from the latter years of the Grand Coalition government into this 7 years, 8 years or so of the Jubilee administration, where 100% is the maximum you can give, and a pass mark is 65%. What would you give?
I would give 30%.
30.
Because even things, yes, it appears harsh, but I'll explain to you why.
Mm-hmm.
Even things that look obvious are no longer obvious. This constitution was supposed to bring us from impunity to a country that upholds the rule of law. We have seen in recent times a reversal of the gains in the constitution. Extrajudicial killings are still a big problem. So the government, through the law enforcement agencies, instead of upholding and protecting the rights of its citizens, is the number one violator of the fundamental rights of its citizens. And it's not just about during arrest. Look at what has happened this week on the eve of celebration of the 10th anniversary of the Constitution. People who are demonstrating countrywide against the death of COVID funds are being beaten up by the police, brutalized, tear gassed, and these are peaceful demonstrations, rights entrenched in the Constitution, and the police have time to harass peaceful citizens expressing themselves, but not time to quickly arrest the COVID millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think that because of certain violations which are so blatant, I would give 30%, meaning that there are structures the government has set in accordance with the Constitution, but they don't appear to believe in it. Look at devolution. I was just talking about non-implementation of the Equalization Fund. Look at how the counties have been forced to take leased medical equipment, decisions that should have been taken by the counties, procurement that should have been done by the counties. The center is still holding on to the money. If you look at the chapter on how to utilize public finance, we have still not moved to transparency and accountability. Look at the chapter on leadership and integrity, hardly implemented. We are having people accused of economic crimes and serious criminal offenses like murder still serving in office. It is unheard of anywhere. If you look at the many, many key things in the Constitution, people's participation, it has not been fully embraced, and people's voices are still unheard. That is why the president can tell us that he sees a constitutional moment, him as an individual and his people, his cronies, not the citizens. The Constitution gives the power to the people. Those at the center have grabbed power from the people. The people of Kenya, this is a wake-up call. We must take our power back. And that's what citizens are trying to do.
What do you think? Are we looking at a lack of political will, or really how far the rot has eaten in when it comes to impunity and things like corruption? Is that the reason why, or are those the hindrances to implementation of some of these things that we are looking at now? Or could there be something else?
It's lack of political will. Anybody enthusiastic about implementation of the Constitution would take time to understand what people agreed on, what the covenant between those in authority and the people is, because that is in the Constitution, and would endeavor to faithfully implement. I see an effort not to implement, but to disobey anything that is in the Constitution. The government is again number one, the executive, in disobeying court orders. If you look at the prosecutions, certain prosecutions do appear to be political. If it is during this COVID season, the prosecutions that have arisen out of disobeying the social distancing rules are skewed. For people who are favored by the government, they can do as they please. They can violate all the COVID rules and they will not be arrested. People who are out of favor are being arrested. We want to see even-handedness in the application of the law. And this also goes for serious offenses. We are fighting corruption, but even that fight is skewed. There are some people who are known to be to have committed corruption offenses who walk scot-free, and there are others who are in court. We want to see even-handedness in all these things. So we really have a deep problem. It is not one area that lacks implementation. It's generally that the Jubilee administration has trashed the 2010 Constitution. We as a people must face up to them and make our voices heard that we want the Constitution implemented before any talk of amending it. If you cannot implement what we have, then you are likely not to even honor what you bring.
You talked about the time for Kenyans to then be able to take this bull by the horns, essentially.
Yes.
You're at a unique position now where you're on the other side of things, having been in government before. if you were in government at this point and there is a clamor for Kenyan citizens to take this bull by the horn, what would that look like? What would it look like then for you to be able to say, look here, guys, Kenyans are asking for something and we are at a position and we have an opportunity to actually make this happen? What would it look like in that decision-making area that would say, you know what, we need to do this?
A leader who obeys their oath of office and honors their oath of office, because the president and all people in government, state officers, have sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution. This is a moment that calls for each leader to be true to their oath of office, to protect and defend the Constitution. Protecting and defending the Constitution, or upholding and defending the Constitution, is actually implementing it and living it. So the government is called upon to live the Constitution. You cannot just take the part of the Constitution that sets up your office, gives you the power, but reject what benefits the people. That's what we are seeing, and that is impunity reloaded. And we really have to hold our leaders to account. And I am glad I'm speaking at a time Kenyans have found their voices. Increasingly, we are seeing people taking action, not just the demonstrations, but if you listen to the conversation around the webinar, people are holding government to account. We call upon people of goodwill to upscale this. The government must feel the weight of the people, and they must act in accordance with the Constitution.
Now that the political class seems to be speaking from and reading from the same page, then the onus is on the civil society as well to take the leadership on this. Do you feel that the civil society is alive to the moment?
Yes, I do feel that. I have said we have seen increased activity, and I think that a time is coming when people who are progressive, who agree that we must defend this Constitution and ensure that it's implemented, will increase the pace of the action that they take, and also we'll come together because we need to consolidate our efforts to push for the faithful implementation of the Constitution, to push for the transformation we envisaged to be availed by the 2010 Constitution.
Mheshimiwa, if we look at if I were to take what you've said at face value,
yeah,
would I be right in assuming that what you're actually saying is that this government has actually failed?
Yes. I think even in the last statement we made as NAC Kenya, we said this government has practically not just failed, but collapsed.
So how then do we see the possibility of an implementation of this Constitution as we know it happening if it's the same government that is still in power?
What I have said is that President Uhuru Kenyatta has 2 years to the end of his term.
It's actually less.
This is slightly less. This is a window, the last window of opportunity he has to redeem himself and his government. He can do something to return the country to the path of right. And it's never too late to do the right thing. He may not achieve much, but just beginning the journey to implement faithfully the Constitution, returning the country to the rule of law and fighting impunity, ensuring that people's voices are heard, ensuring there is inclusiveness, not exclusion, those will be good steps for starters. If not, it is time also for us as Kenyans to have a conversation with ourselves about how we elect leaders, about what we need to do to ensure that we will not come from the Jubilee administration to a worse regime, that we purposely elect in a manner that will help the country come out of the situation of the quagmire we are in. And when I talk of elections, it's from the lowest office to the highest. we have a tendency in this country to over-concentrate on presidential elections only. But my message on this 10th anniversary to fellow citizens is that what matters most in your daily life are things your county government should be doing for you. County government was brought near you so that they can ensure the health care works for you, so that they can ensure your rural access roads are better. They can ensure you have access to water and sanitation. They can ensure that you can take your produce to the market and that you have support for your agricultural extension services, and agriculture here covers livestock. Therefore, if you do not elect good MCAs and a good governor, leaders of integrity, you will suffer even though the money is disbursed from the national government. We also need to elect good people at the national level, a good MP, a good woman representative, a good senator. All the 6 seats should be populated by leaders of integrity. Let us put values and what people stand for ahead of money, because Kenyan elections have turned into a contest of who has more money than the other.
I mean, beyond pointing out the failings of this government, which I feel are patently obvious, what do the other political parties in this country think and feel they should do? I say this because the Mwananchi tends to listen to their political leaders.
That is why, as NAC Kenya, we are putting forward what we think should be done. And we are engaging not just at the national level, but also at the grassroots level with our people. And I think it is time for parties to up their game. All these successes would not happen without complicity of the major parties represented in Parliament. Because Parliament is a watchdog of the people. Parliament is supposed to put government on its toes, but Parliament has been co-opted by the executive. And therefore we have lost a valuable watchdog. We have seen the Senate in this debate of revenue allocation attempting to free itself from the clutches of the executive. I do hope that they take this issue of their independence and assertiveness as seriously as they do at this time moving forward. And I'm reminding the National Assembly that they too can do the same. The county assemblies, they too can do the same. We need vibrant watchdogs, and we need a vibrant civil society that puts the government on its toes and stops the government excesses. And to the civil society, I want to say, yes, you are on the right track. Let's upscale the activity.
Let's have a conversation about political parties and their role. When you talk about implementation of this constitution, there's a political class, which is not just the executive and the party in power, but also all the other political parties. Do you feel that the political parties, the many political parties in this country, have also blame to carry over the 30% that you give the implementation process?
I think to varying degrees. Take, for instance, my party, which doesn't have a single member of parliament. So how would we then be able to hold the national government to account in parliament? We have representation in various county assemblies, 8 to be precise. Where we have a sizable number, we really also must play our role and we must be audited. But the two parties who carry the heaviest responsibility are Jubilee and ODM, who dominate a majority of the county assemblies. There are parties like ANC, who may also have a majority in 1 or 2 county assemblies, KANU. So there are parties that have responsibility in 1 or 2 assemblies. But for the National Assembly and Senate, it is mainly Jubilee and ODM. That is not to say that those of us without much representation cannot do something. We are raising our voices and speaking for the party I lead, NAC Kenya. we are raising our voices way above the numbers elected on our ticket. And I'm encouraging other parties to also raise voices, irrespective of whether they have representation in parliament or not, in the county assemblies or not. And this space is not just for political parties. It is for every Kenyan, even as individuals. We need to have our voices count. Yes.
As CT said, Kenyans will listen to their political leaders because there's a level of trust that we have in our political leaders. Is there space, is there a platform that political parties can come together, even those without a representation in the Houses of Parliament, where they can raise their voice, where they can play a watchdog role?
Yes, we have a platform, the Center for Multi-Party Development, CMD, where we come together as political parties and where we draw a common agenda. And in the last People's Dialogue Festival hosted by the CMD, we did suggest that they should start hosting quarterly breakfast meetings for political party leaders where we can discuss issues of national importance and the direction the country is taking, the lack of implementation of the Constitution. Those are issues we can discuss. The issue of having a credible electoral process before the next election. Because I believe that Article 86 and 81 and all laws relating to the electoral process have not been implemented. We are using rules even in the courts that were made with the old regime in mind before the Constitution spelled out that elections have to be transparent, they have to be accurate, records have to be kept. We need to come together as political parties and help our country to make corrections in the electoral process. And when I say this, it's not by way of constitutional amendment, by way of amending our laws and rules to ensure that they conform with the Constitution and to help us have credible elections. We do have a role, yes.
But is it possible really for our political players, those in big parties, small parties, aspiring politicians, is it possible for the Kenyan politician to actually put aside their selfish interests? Because with all the good intention in the world, this always seems to get in the way.
It happens only when people, the citizen, is sufficiently mobilized. The threat of losing power is what brings the political class together to make pro-people amendments. If you see our history, in 1997, we came together as parliament in the Inter-Party Parliamentary Group, IPPG. Why? Civil society had organized so much outside, and some of the political class had joined the civil society because really they had strength. And that time, we came together as parliament and made some profound changes to the Constitution and to our laws to enlarge the democratic space. We were faced with a situation where our relevance as an institution, as parliament, was in question. If you look at KANU government in 2000 and in 1991 December, when Section 2A was repealed to bring back multi-party democracy, they were threatened by the opposition push together with civil society. They were threatened by being overrun by loss of power, and they agreed to the change to the Constitution to return plural democracy. If you look at the push for the Constitution was not willingly brought in by the political class. It is that the clamor, the push, the strength of the people was too much. And the political class had no option but to listen and obey to the dictates of the people. So yes, it is possible, and the people always triumph. It may take time, but the people always win. So I want to remind us as Kenyans, we've done this before, we've succeeded before, we can, we will, and we must succeed in turning around our country, in achieving the dream of the 2010 Constitution.
Martha Karua, I want to thank you very much for speaking to us today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for, always reminding the citizens that the journey ahead is still a long journey. And as we finish on this, I'd like to ask just a final question on what you talked about. This is a moment for the president. He has 2 years or less. It's a moment for him to grab this and see how best then can he steer the country towards the better implementation and realization of the constitutional dream. Do you think not that's what he has in mind when, for example, he said yesterday that we are in a constitutional moment, that this is a time for us to have this conversation to see what is working and what is not working and not be stuck in this constitutional rigidity? Don't you think that this is an opportunity that he's actually also seeing and he's seizing, and maybe it's an opportunity for the rest of the country to take?
With the greatest respect to the president, he appears to be the one stuck on his constitutional moment, which is not really a constitutional moment, because a constitutional moment is when there is a general consensus that it is necessary to bring changes to the constitution. The last polls done on the BBI, it is about 1% of Kenyans who thought it was important. How then can he be talking of a constitutional moment where only him and those close to him, his political allies, are seeing the constitutional moment? The rest of the country is saying this is not our priority. I want to appeal to the president not to be rigid. I want to just use the language you used yesterday. With respect, Mr. President, don't be stuck on the BBI. Listen to the people. That is your role. Listen to the mood on the ground and do things that are of critical importance and priority to the people of Kenya. This is your last window of opportunity. Otherwise, you go on record as the president who tried to subvert the will of the people. And to us as Kenyans, it is our moment to remind the government and to assert our supremacy, to ensure that the will of Kenyans is done.
Thank you very much. Martha Karua, party leader, NARC Kenya, and also Justice Minister 2006 to 2009, still very active on the political and national leadership front and fighting for social justice. We thank you very much for joining us. We hope we'll be speaking to you again. We enjoy having conversations with you.
I enjoy having conversation with you. You are my favorite station.
Thank you very much.
Asante sana. And thank you very much for tuning in to this Situation Room on Spice FM this morning and also on KTN Home. It's time for us to say goodbye to our KTN Home audience. We wish you a great day as we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Constitution. We'll be back shortly. In the next hour, if you can join us on Spice FM, we'll be speaking to Archbishop Martin Kivuva of the Catholic Archdiocese of Mombasa. He was speaking yesterday with other religious organizations and religious leaders, bringing together the other faiths, and they were talking about this constitution, giving a scorecard on the constitution itself, and also raising issues that seeing what has worked and what has not worked. So join us on Spice FM, Nairobi 94.4, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, in Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, Njeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7, and also live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Spice FM KE. Good morning. It's 5 minutes to 9.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
Okay, let's talk about Captain Cargo. www.kpa.co.ke/Captain KARGO, the information portal by the Kenya Ports Authority.
Okay, so we get to the point where the pilot of the vessel is actually quite involved in this whole process. So he logs, so the pilot will log chits and other information that are keyed into the system by marine operations and also to finance for billing. So they're also quite involved. You would think that it was just the admin that happens and then the pilot just, has to move the vessel from one point to another, but also involved in this process so that through the checks and balances, you can make sure that your stuff is on the way or at least has left. So the shipping agent then receives the port dues and stevedoring bills and makes a payment deposit. Your cargo is offloaded or loaded from or onto the vessel, and the vessel departs. So all of this seems like it takes place over a matter of weeks, but it's actually a matter of days that all this stuff has happened, and you can see very clearly what goes on. We'll look at the final two in a short while in terms of how this happens, but I think it's very interesting that, this can be done all simultaneously, and you are aware of this operations.
And it's important for you to know this because if you're, let's say, importing cargo into Mombasa or into any other port in the country, and you don't know what you expected or what to expect, then it gives you even more sleepless nights because you don't know exactly what's going to happen. But if you just go to Captain Cargo, and this is on kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo, you'll be able to know. So even when you're dealing with shipping agents, you're dealing with clearing and forwarding agents, you know what you expect from them and you know what they are supposed to be doing, and you'll be completely understanding of what they're doing.
And if something isn't clear, you can always see clarity.
Oh, yes. So you can even call KPA. You can go to their Captain Cargo portal. There is a chat there that you can just open and start talking to them and ask them direct questions of what you want to do and what you want to know. Good morning. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We're coming up to 9 o'clock. Like I said, in the next hour, we talk now to the religious leaders. We know the religious leaders who are really instrumental and played a central role in the clamor for a new constitution and even where we are at. Although very many of the religious leaders were campaigning for no vote in this particular constitution, we want to know where they stand in that particular one. We'll be speaking to Archbishop Martin Kivuva of the Catholic Archdiocese of Mombasa shortly. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here.
Okay, so where we saw there was traffic before, it seems to be coming to an end. Not too much of an issue right around the NMA, except on Mombasa Road, where it's terrible near the airport at the JKIA turnoff. Everybody on at the same time outbound, and it's bumper to bumper. If there's anything worse than that, that's exactly what it is. It's going to take some time to get out of that, but it takes you just until about General Motors, and then thereafter you're on Easy Street, as it were, heading then into the CBD. Right around the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, however, as you get to the CBD, and then on towards Westlands. Again, another bumper-to-bumper situation, and it's likely to be that way for some time, but you'll be fine. You'll get out alive eventually. But just making you aware that that's what you're headed towards. Spice FM KE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter, just in case anything else does jump out at you.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
2 minutes after 9. So let's begin the hour with today's proverb. C.T. Muga.
Today's proverb. Hi, Proverbs. African Proverbs.
Yeah.
A man with a running stomach, a man with diarrhea, will not require anyone to give them direction to the door. The urgency of the situation will propel him in
towards the exit.
Yes, it will.
No need for marking, no need of lights will light up and down the alley and up.
No road signs.
Nothing. You will find the way. Okay, mwenye haja huenda choo. Is that what it says? Yes. That's what the Medali says, isn't it?
That's what it says.
Any other close translation or any other close proverb that goes like this one, just tweet us at SpiceFMKE. We are discussing the Constitution implementation today. I mean, this is the one day that we get to look at this Katiba from back to front, inside and out, and looking at what has happened. So many comments coming in on Twitter as well. Ndongo Wainaina says the first dent on Constitution of Kenya 2010 happened during its promulgation day. President Kibaki invited Sudan President al-Bashir, who was had been indicted by the ICC. I remember that moment when he walked into Uhuru Park. And, especially for the battery of journalists who were there, who were like,
Hold on a minute.
Wait.
What's going on here?
Everyone was, is that Bashir?
Alternate.
Is Balala walking next to...
Yeah.
Who's that? And it was clear, yes. It was Omar al-Bashir.
Well, Mr. Ndungwanana has a point, doesn't he?
Does he have a point?
He has a point. He has an extremely valid point.
Yep.
You know, it's odd that the disregard for the rule of law seems to have taken center stage in our very existence. This is not one of those moments where we now just point at the politicians or the executive or the judiciary. It's part and parcel of our existence. Now, the really difficult thing is, how do you get out of this quagmire? How do you? Because you can have all these lovely debates. How do you prevent, for instance, members of parliament, aspiring members of parliament, political leaders, how do you stop them from looking after their own selfish interests?
That's the thing. And we talk about, the conversation has been around political will. And it sounds very nice to say, as I listen to, these things over and over again, and I'm forced to ask myself, how do you inject will into somebody? It's a decision somebody has to take on their own. You can't force it. You really can't. It goes along the same lines of how you cannot legislate for morality. You cannot force politics. You cannot force will. Will, by definition, means it's a decision you take on your own.
Personal, individual choice.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think Martha Karua gave an answer. She talked about the clamor until the change of Section 2A, the repeal of Section 2A. She talked about the IPPG. She even talked about this constitution itself going all the way to Bomas. Civil society. Civil society was able to organize and mobilize the citizens so much that politicians felt that they risked losing their power. So that, just the risk, the fear that you could lose power is something that will force a politician to listen to what you're saying. Without that, the politician will do what they want to do.
But unfortunately, the thing about that, as I think about it, that is, it's not legitimate grounds then to exert this will. It's something that you would hope then leaders or those in positions of governance came with the package. They came with the will and wouldn't have to be forced then to bring it about. That you are threatened, that you are your position is at threat, and therefore you decide, all right, let me put this in. Whereby the wish or the desire would be that you came along with it as a full package.
The system swallows you up. People who are very good in the civil society get into government, get into these positions, and you start questioning.
You lose everything about who you are as an individual.
You may not necessarily lose, but you just
you
don't
become
have
compromised.
as loud a voice as you had when you were out there.
You become compromised.
Yep. And this happens a lot. I mean, we have seen very many people who are really strong, strong and active in the civil society movement. They get into positions of elected political leadership and they change, and you wonder, what happened to this person?
Eric, we need to ask the question, do they actually change?
That's
or
the
do we
thing.
see them
That's
for
what I'm
their...
saying.
Or
that's how they always were.
Maybe they're not even changing. Maybe they're not even that way even from before. It's just that because of the loud noise around them, you only get to hear the loud noise around them as well. So they're still trying to shout, but because they're not next to other people who are like them, you see, when you're in the civil society grouping, all of you are speaking the same voice. So you shall hear this one unified loud voice. Then this one person goes and joins this other den of thieves. And what do the den of thieves?
You know, there are people who are known for a certain standard that they have. Why is that? There's consistency over a long period of time.
And you never have to question what this individual would do or not do, regardless of where they were. And that's the thing.
So it's the doing, not the saying.
You can
There
say
are
what you
people
want
who
from
just
here.
say,
So
but
yeah.
then there are those who say and do. And so even when you doubt, you look at what they do, you feel it lessens the element of doubt that you may inject into the conversation. Yes.
You know, the society's true north, like we keep saying, is our faith, right? And our faith leaders are the ones who keep guiding us towards that. And even in those moments, and we'll ask our next guest this particular question that you've raised, so for him to help us, try and unravel and understand what exactly happens. And we'll be joined by Archbishop Martin Kivuva of the Catholic Archdiocese of Mombasa. The Archbishop yesterday was among the religious leaders who held a press conference under the Dialogue Reference Group. This comprised of the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, the Hindu Council of Kenya, the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, the National Council of Churches of Kenya, the Organization of African Instituted Churches, Seventh-day Adventist Church, the Shia Asna Ashri Jamaat, the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims. All of them together, they came and released a joint statement talking about the moment that we are in the country, looking at the implementation of the Constitution, looking at the preparation for the next general election and everything else. And they had what they needed to say. Archbishop, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining the Situation Room. You're in the room with me, Eric Latiff. We have CT Muga and Nduh Okoh.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Archbishop Martin here. I listen to you loud and clear.
Very good.
So, yeah.
Just for clarity, when you're referring to an archbishop, do you say Your Grace or Your Eminence?
Well, it's Your Grace if you're official, but sometimes we shorten just say bishop. That's enough for me.
It sounds rather rude, doesn't it? Hello, Bishop. No, it doesn't.
Your Grace.
As though the bishop is your cousin who, you surely.
So anyway, of the official one title will be Your Grace, but that's what is, we hardly use it many times. At least I don't many times, because the people they don't realize the difference. But that doesn't really matter.
The next thing you're going to hear is Mr. Bishop.
Well, I've not changed as far as I'm about the title. That's not a problem. But in official documents and things like that, when we are doing official talk like this one, it's good. The title is Your Grace, or that's it. That's Your Grace. The bishop is the bishop.
Yep.
Asante sana. So, Eric, what do we have to talk about now today?
So let's talk about the scorecard on the implementation of the Constitution and the Constitution itself. As faith-based leaders, you came out yesterday and you raised a couple of concerns that you said, regarding the implementation of the Constitution, lack of civic education. You said the Kenyans embrace the Constitution as a means of reducing the over-sloppiness of the central government. The executive is clawing back on some of these gains. The national values espoused in the Constitution have not been integrated in national life. Constitutional commissions have largely underperformed, and so on and so forth. Just take us through this particular concerns and why you feel that they stand out for you.
Well, I guess first of all, thank you for having me on the show, and I appreciate all of you coming. The media was there, and the whole team was down there, and more so, we're looking at 10 years down the line. We're celebrating 10 years down the line, and anybody who has any lives in Kenya knows the need where we are. We, especially all of us in Kenya, know the actual situation on the ground. And the clamor for this particular Constitution 2010 came about after a long journey of Kenyan season after season of elections, having so many problems and troubles. Everything stuck on the top, like all the money, all the decision making. And then the question of coming to the down on the ground, what they came to call Wanjiku, taking Wanjiku's ears and eyes and talking to what our needs are, or what Kamau or Njoroges or Molos or whatever names you want to give them. That's where we start from. And then we promulgated in 2010. So we felt we look at it and say, what has happened in these years? We felt it's necessary because even as we speak now, the issue of elections is not just around the corner, 2022.
Yep.
And it must be informed by what we say is going on today. And at a glance, we said, thanks be to God, the devolution came on board, hoping and praying that it will devolve many aspects of what it means a nation, that power given to the people. Again, as just the first article states out there, the first that's about power to the people, and people being able to make decisions together with the leaders that have been chosen on their behalf. So that's where we came. That's our kind of background. And remember, this is not just a background, but also many people have died and lost lives due to mismanagement and governance issues, and starting right from the start. So we felt it is necessary we come on board, and all the time the church has worked with the people and also with the politicians somehow or other to try to engage in a manner that let's provide what constitutions are all about. The constitutions are about providing resources to the people, encouraging them to and sharing the decision-making processes. At the same time, not just leaving a few people make a decision and keep it for themselves, and we are pushed to just obey. So this is where the background comes in. And then secondly, even church anywhere in the world, it's a big stakeholder because we share the same people, the so-called government shares. We live with them every day. Like now, we see what they're going through, all this pandemic now we speak about. So it is necessary we take stock. That's how we are, Eric. That's the background. Yeah.
It is said that well over 80% of Kenyans claim that they are Christian. I'm now not talking about just religious.
I hear you. I say that 1,000 times myself. Anyway.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Now, what it means, therefore, is those in the leadership of the church have just about the biggest constituency that anybody can ever think of in the country.
Correct. I hear you.
Would you rightfully say that those in leadership have understood this role that they have or the position that they're in, and that they have led their flock in the way that would best help not just themselves but the nation?
That is exactly why we are not living the sin. The sin, it tells me, and that's the same question I ask myself and ask you and ask everyone else. By the way, not just church. Let's say the whole nation is full of religious people. If they're not Christian, they're Hindus.
Yep.
If they're not Hindus, they are Muslims. If they are not Muslims, they are even traditionalists. Those are all people who believe in some God, a power out there that manages and protects us, that we adhere to and we worship. So 80% Catholic, yes. Other denominations, different formations, yes. So why we are together? In fact, that's why our dialogue reference group is not just Christians alone, and it's not just Muslims alone. It's not just tradition. It's open to all, so that we think together and walk together same direction. So the call to even what we ourselves call chapter 6 was a breath of fresh air, where it challenges all of us as Kenyans. Doesn't matter which religion you belong to. Doesn't matter what church you go to. Doesn't matter what mosque you go to. It challenges all of us, young, old, everyone, that we behave, work, and interact in a manner that respects each other, that provides guidance, that provides joy to be Kenyans. But the very same chapter tells about people who bring dishonor. They should not be elected, or they should not be part of the journey. So, in a way, where we seem to have failed personally, I think, there's what you call usurping power by a few. though we meet for everyone, use up power, and everybody has to toe the line. It doesn't matter, it's finances, whatever it is. This has been one of our worst, if I may call it,
spells.
Undoing of ourselves. Undoing. Because I give you the responsibility to run this station, and that station you run and make the money for whoever has employed you. But instead of doing the same, you own it by sidetracking matters of the institution.
Yeah.
And the institution here, I mean the country, Kenya.
Doesn't it then point to some sort of failure of leadership by, like I started by introducing and saying, our religious leaders are our moral compass. They're the ones who show us where we ought to go. One of the concerns that you raise in your statement, Archbishop, is that the national values espoused in the Constitution have not been integrated in national life, and Kenyans continue to suffer from the effects of leadership that lacks ethics and integrity. Where are the religious leaders as all this is happening?
The religious leaders are sitting with you there. We are all part of. We do not segregate ourselves. Say we are religious, you are the folk. But the mind of the individual, the way it has happened in this country and many nations, you yourself know, depends entirely on the top leadership. If a father of a house does not spend the money he earns for the family, the failure is not the wife, because neither failure is anybody else. It is the failure is the father of that house. And maybe whatever caused him to do so needs to be checked. Is he just happens to do? It's like there are people who suffer from diseases. Or the question is, do we elect the right leaders with the right motivation, with the right attitude, and with the right values? That's the question. And many times we challenge ourselves as electorate, because when we come to time for elections and you wait until they come, you can hear the amount of billions that are circulating and that are just, so the people don't ever think of what they are doing. And even when they do, they're so hungry anyway, they want the money, and they don't seem to think about what they are causing pain to themselves in the future. So, as church people, we used to have, can I say this loudly? We used to have a civic education processes where we try to engage people to choose and decide leadership, not because so-and-so can give us money. Because if we demand it too much, he'll have to steal the same money to give it back to us. But many times our leadership, I'm not blaming anybody, it's just an attitude. If you walk to a place, any you know what happens. You walk to a crowd that you paid to elect you. The next step they say, we want this, and if they don't get it, then you're in trouble. And also, since you have spent yourself money to bribe them, to bring them on board, it becomes almost a right to sidetrack the money to pay yourself. If you're taking a loan, you have had politicians or people getting broke after the election. And this has been our undoing partly. How do we choose leaders? The story of our Bible tells us about electing the 7 deacons, and tells us a person with the good conduct, a person who has walked with the people for many years, and who has the people at heart. So it does appear. We're not blaming all, and there are very good leaders, by the way, don't get me wrong. We have many good, very, very, very good leaders and very good people, but we say it seems apparently the country has gotten where we are.
But Your Grace, where are these good people you speak of? Because our media, our narrative, everything we see around us seems to have been captured and seems to have been held captive by people who cannot in any way be referred to as good people.
But remember, the media stations are owned by the owners. So the media is not free as we wish to be. Sometimes you go out, if you try to do the stories, you have to sing the song of whoever employs you. You know that. So that is part of the issue.
Not necessarily, Your Grace, because let me explain where I'm going with this. You see, we don't rely on our politicians to give us spiritual guidance. We most certainly don't. Because if we did, we would all end up in a place that we don't really want to go to. We rely on people of the cloth like yourself and others who we believe have a calling, and as a result are mandated by that calling to guide us, even when we don't want to be guided. The question I'm actually asking is, has that role been fulfilled?
Well, it's a continuous, like what we say, a salvation is continuous. It's not one off and it's done and we go home.
True.
That's why you found us where you found us yesterday, if you're in the team there, or why we do this kind of a forum, because we keep checking ourselves. We are not immune to being abused, also to being bribed or to be cheated and so on. We are not immune. Society has a way of even trying to bend things to suit certain class or certain people or certain way of doing things as a way infiltrating the very institution of church. Because if we realize that, but however, our mandate demands we continue to be what the late Njeri Thorne called the conscience of the people. We do that by not just one statement, through formation, through teaching, through schools, through the homilies, through our day-to-day interaction with our people. And if you look at, and you can say that where people have been helped to build, or to rather to form the conscience, before I take that somebody's shilling or whatever, before I steal somebody's money, before I do anything, there's a stigma in your mind that creaks and kind of haunts you. We see cases, for example, and I say that because we are all part of the solution, a part of the problem. But as a church, we are not here away from the people. We are part of it.
Do we hear then enough from the church now that you said that? Do we hear enough when some of these things that are happening that deal with the issues of leadership and integrity, which are integral in the Constitution, do we hear enough clamor that comes from a church on a daily basis? Because just from what you're saying, Your Grace, then I tend to think that it is not just on a Sunday morning where you go in and you hear the word, or during the week where you have a meeting. It's got to be an everyday pricking of the conscience. So do we hear enough of that?
Well, I don't know where I come from, but where I come from, it shouldn't be only church. It should be all of us together. Do you do that to your children? Do I do that to my workplace, in that workplace? Because if we all of us have a conscience that pricks, and we want to build a culture of honesty, it has to be an effort of the parent, an effort of the teacher in school, the effort of the preacher on the pulpit, the effort of the politician on the ground. So it is not only the so-called the church. The church has its central law reserved, but it also spreads out through the members. You are, we are. So are the Muslims at the same time. They do the same. They teach and inform their people to behave and act in a certain manner, which seems to be where the problem is. But that notwithstanding, many times people are distracted by things that they go through. For example, why do we have crime in major cities, and especially areas that have serious issues? You find a certain section of our cities, or a section not even here, I'm talking world over, crime is prevalent, or it's so big, because the impact of what you call the social sector, say poverty in this manner, or lack of amenities for that reason, or a conflict coming from whatever reason, impact seriously negative on families and children growing up. So there's a need to look at it in a broader sense, and that's how, even a church is not about just preaching about don't, or prick their conscience. It's growing up a community of love, a community that is propelled by values, and these are the problems you have. So community propelled by values of love, even I call it so in a big word, in terms of care, in terms of minding your brother, caring for one another, being my brother's keeper. These are values that even without or within the context, now you put those in context of constitution, that's how we end up having to form a community. And I'm almost definite, every time you go to a home, I've never seen a church where it just talks about the nice things. We also bring both up the things that we feel are ailing the society.
Right.
Yes.
If we look at the constitution journey, Your Grace,
yes.
we can say maybe at some point, even before the clamor for change in the late 80s, at some point, the church was still continuing to raise the issues in the society, but then the church started becoming more active, and we now got an activist religious leadership that was then participating in the direct push for change. If you look at Ufungamano, if you look at whatever was happening throughout this period, the church was not just issuing statements, but the church was organizing, the church was hosting people, even the civil society and others, to come and harmonize their voice. Do you think it's about time again for the religious sector to do the same? Now that you're saying that, yes, 10 years down the road, we have implemented some of parts of this constitution, but there are areas that are still of serious concern. Is it about time that the church now became more active?
The church should be more active, and this also given the space it needs to be. It has its own space. I agree with you, Eric. And I remember 2016. You remember where we started off. 2016 was that time we had just before the coming of the election, 2017, where we had to deal with the IEBC story, which you all know, and where it ended up. Moving up the IEBC, Isaac Hyson, and bringing other members, because that is exactly where the problem, and the church was not invited to do so. We had to engage creatively and also with the reason-making. Kenyans reason, because the standoff that we saw just before the election, the standoff, the amount of agitation, which also became all very, very, very violent and could cause, and already actually caused death, was obviously cannot be allowed to continue. So we took the responsibility and rather the step, and the church is not just the church, Catholic Church or Protestant Church, it is all religious teams. In fact, this is the same team, the Dialogue Reference Group, that did that. At that time, we had the chairman, Bishop Coril, the late Bishop Coril, God have mercy on him, and other members of other faiths. I'm just saying that. I was also part of that journey. We went, visited Isaac Hyson. We went, visited then the Right Honorable Raila team. We went, visited the president then. We went, met the parliamentarians. So we made sure we let ourselves create a dialogue, because everything cannot go by just throwing stones. Everything cannot go by only saying nice things. We need to create a round table.
Yep.
And we are lucky we have these round tables. These are the parliamentarians that should be doing some of these things to agitate for certain things, especially in a country like ours, which is so blessed with so much. If I remember many countries you go to in Africa, you realize Kenya is blessed with so much wealth, so much possibilities. The institutions that are in Kenya, in different parts of our country, they just marvel you. It is us who mess it up. It's us who mess up. Greed, in other words. Just greed, nothing more.
Archbishop Martin Kivuva, I want to thank you very much for speaking to us this morning, and also for highlighting the areas of concern and what you feel that the society ought to do to to get us back on the right track. We will thank you very much for speaking to us today.
Thank you, Rick. You are through with the interview today?
Yes.
Yes. So thanks so much, and we'll get back again with you. But let me say this.
Yep.
We are concerned, and we really are concerned. Kenyans are very angry, as you saw, about the pillaging of our resources. the stealing of monies, what you call corruption. Corruption is just stealing, really, of public funds. And the way we have seen it happen recently, we have had it happen recently, this particular one about the COVID-19 funds, pandemic funds, it's scary what Kenyans can do to one another. So that's why we called and made an appeal, not an appeal, a demand. This should be a big lesson to all of us. Leaders of this caliber and whoever is behind them. I mean, gentlemen, I think we need to do something about it. So it's unfortunate it's happening when we are all under key and lock. We cannot go very far. People are under curfew and so on. It's unfortunate people can sit in a boardroom to plan how to steal, how to divert resources. It's unfortunate, honestly. And it's a pity that this has to be, and everybody knows, and that's why the larger community where everybody is, they think it's just a joke, this pandemic thing. They say, oh no, this is it's just a money-making adventure for a few.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, which is, I say unfortunately, but I believe Corona is here, and we need to demand all of us to follow the protocols, but more so protect that belongs to Kenyans, not to allow it go out.
Asante sana.
And lastly is to thank you all for coming on the aid of Kenyans. You've been on forefront, especially the fourth estate. Yourselves are very, very vocal, not because of anything else, but because of the concern we have. If we lose everything, what will the generations come here and say we did? Indeed. It is unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
Asante
but
sana.
Anyway, God bless you. Thank you and your good team over there.
Thank you very much.
We'll be in touch again. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Archbishop Martin Kivuva is the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Mombasa, the Catholic Church. And we thank him very much for speaking to us this morning. Taking a quick break, take a look at weather and traffic, and then we come back and open up the phone lines now as we celebrate 10 years of this Constitution. We want to ask you the question, is this Constitution delivering Wanjiko's aspirations and dreams? Is this Constitution delivering Wanjiko's dreams and aspirations? 0719-012-600. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. You can also join the conversation on Twitter, SpiceFMKE, Facebook, SpiceFMKE, Instagram, as well as YouTube, SpiceFMKE as well.
Spice FM, Nakuru. The weather
It's still partly cloudy in parts of Nairobi, mostly cloudy coming in later. Highs of 24 and lows of 14 today. In Njeri at 17 degrees, warming up just a little bit. We'll see highs of 22 with showers later in the day. And in Nakuru, 17 degrees and sunny conditions for now. That'll change later because it's going to be a wet afternoon with all the rain that's in store. In Eldoret, 17 degrees, mostly sunny for now. Highs of 21 and lows of 12 with showers later on. Mostly sunny at 23 in Kisumu. Highs of 28 and lows of 19. Sunny conditions at 21 also in Kakamega. Highs of 25 and lows of 14 with showers expected later. There will be showers in Mombasa later as they started this morning. Currently at mostly cloudy conditions at 26. We'll go to a high of 28 and lows of 23. Malindi is mostly cloudy at 27, highs of 28 and lows of 24. In Kampala, it's partly cloudy at 21, highs of 27 and lows of 18 with showers expected later. In Dar es Salaam, light rain showers already coming down at 26 degrees. It'll go to a high of 29 and lows of 21. And in Joburg, it's still warming up, 13 degrees today, mostly sunny conditions, highs of 22 and lows of 11 with cloudy conditions later. Lagos is partly cloudy at 24, highs of 29 and lows of 23 with cloudy conditions and rain in the afternoon. Let's take a quick last look into Europe. And in London, 14 degrees and partly cloudy, going to rain showers later with highs of 19 and lows of 13. 15 degrees and mostly cloudy in Paris, highs of 26 and lows of 15. And we finish things off in New York today, where scattered thunderstorms are ruling the morning, where it's just about 2 a.m. 34 is quite warm for New York, but that's what the high will be today, and lows of 23.
Spice up your life.
Okay, except for what we see happening on Mombasa Road, which is absolutely normal between that area of the SGR and then to Cabanas, because we have so much interchanging right there. That's why we have that bumper-to-bumper situation. But you should be fine thereafter, because then past General Motors, like we say, it's okay. Into the CBD and out shouldn't take you too long, except if you're on the Hulu Highway, where there's still a bumper-to-bumper situation. Getting into the CBD then from Thika Road, where we had already an accident this morning. We've just seen information about that right around the Muthaiga overpass. But then getting into the CBD, you'll be fine. So it's in and out of the CBD in good time now with no problems. Out of traffic hour officially. Don't expect to see heightened levels until later. And if you get stuck anywhere, don't hesitate to let us know. We can spread the word or find an alternate route for that. Spice of MKE, not to forget. That's how you can get us on Twitter.
Everything nice, everything nice.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.
The phone lines are now open. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. And also, you can join this conversation on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Spice of MKE. Is this constitution delivering Wanjiko's dreams and aspirations? Do you think it is doing that, Nduh?
Well, I mean, the thing is that there's been so much talk around the implementation, and if something is not implemented, whatever it was meant to be carrying, then it has not happened. Things could have happened to a varying degree, but in terms of completion, or even in terms of an ongoing continuous process, I think people are having, problems coming to terms with that. Some of the things that we talked about, even if you want to look at the contentious Chapter 6 and what that means, and what it then means, look at what examples that we see in papers today. Sitting members of parliament, sitting governors, sitting this, that, and the other thing, whose rap sheet is from here till wherever. And then you have to ask yourself the question, these are people who are in positions of leadership over certain areas where people are asking for certain services then to be fulfilled. So if somebody is preoccupied with lining their own pockets, at what time or with what resources then will they make this available to the Wanjiko that you talk about?
The influence of the spoken word cannot be underestimated. And this is why when we're talking to the Archbishop, I seem to be hammering a certain point home. You see, if alternative voices are louder than your own and you're supposed to be the conscience, who do you think is going to hold sway at the end of the day?
It's alternative.
Yes. And this alternative, unfortunately, is no longer alternative. It's become the norm. Herein lies the problem. So it isn't as though the problem is, people keep saying it's our leaders. No. These leaders are part and parcel of the society. And by and large, what they tend to do is simply reflect what that society is all about. When you talk about graft, it isn't just in parliament or it isn't just in the civil service. It's everywhere, even in the church. Now, the dominant narrative ought to be that it is so small in a place like the church that it is something to marvel at when it happens.
Yeah.
That isn't the case.
That's unfortunate.
It has
though, that
changed.
It is not.
Yes. Now, the very people we are speaking of, these people we speak of as being the perpetrators of these ills, many of these people go to churches. They're members of churches. Some are, yes, and some of them are even leaders within those churches. It is clear that somewhere along the line, the narrative that was previously considered alternative or even negative has held sway. And it's because the other voices that were supposed to be louder are not loud enough.
Not loud enough.
Let's hear from these other voices. Karaoke calling in from Wakulima Market in Nakuru. Good morning.
Good morning to you guys. How are you?
Fine,
Salama
thanks,
kabisa,
Karaoke.
Karaoke. Happy Katiba Day.
Thank you.
You're laughing
Well, I want
today.
to
Karaoke.
contribute towards the what you have said. In fact, I agree, and I've been telling you all along.
Mm-hmm.
The current BBI is not going to serve the Wanjikos as per their aspiration. I've been saying all along, any opportunity that ever arises to change the new constitution, according to what Wanjiko says, the political class takes over, and in fact brings in that which is not the interest of Wanjiko. As I've been listening to PLO, what he has said for us to be vigilant, because the BBI has been hijacked already by the political class. Because remember, we as Wanjiko have been overburdened by, remember what PLO has said, that during their time going around the country, in fact seeking the views from Kenyans, remember they said Wanjiko has never said anything to do with the increment of the number of parliamentarians, as they have done already under this constitution. And two, even the 47 counties, they never agreed on. Today, as Wanjiko, we are crying because of these seats that have been increased. Now, my question is, are you truly sure that we are going to get anything that is going to help Wanjiko, rather than to call tribal grouping in the name of, unajua mimi nikikuja nitakuja na watu yangu wa kabila langu la Western ama Kikuyu, whatever. See that? So anything to do with the BBI is not coming to serve our interest. Remember, it is a product of two people, Uhuru and Raila Odinga, just for the dynasty to continue staying at the top of our country, at the expense of the millions of Kenyans who are going to suffer. They are just plain deception.
Karaoke, can I ask you a question, please?
Please go ahead.
Is there anything good in this BBI?
I mean, I don't think, if at all, truly, the BBI is coming with a political class whereby they have already into. Remember, even if there is anything good towards Wanjiko, do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
If there is anything good towards Wanjiko, but it is overburdened by the creation of seats to broaden up the executive. That's where the problem is. Even today, the coming up with the 47 count doesn't matter. What matters are the finances that are brought by the new constitution towards the devolution, towards the counties. Does it truly serve the purpose of the people? Yes, we may say it has served in one way or the other around 10 or 20%. But what about 80% that has been taken away by the chief executives of the county, right? And we want where Wanjiko will feel at least finances are coming towards them. That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
Do we agree on that?
We agree on that.
So
Karaoke?
the BBI, to me, is not serving the Wanjiko. Go ahead.
We hear you, we hear what you're saying, and we want to say thank you very much for your contribution today. I mean, you raise pertinent issues. We want to still continue opening up the phone line, 0719-012-600. Join the conversation. Do you feel like the Constitution of Kenya 2010 is living up and delivering the promise to Wanjiko? What is it that Wanjiko wanted with the Constitution? Is that what Wanjiko is receiving with, the implementation of this constitution? Are we actually living that dream? There are very many things that have been implemented. I mean, let's be fair. I mean, there are very many things that have been implemented. There are many things that have been put on paper in terms of what needed to come in on paper. We have all these constitutional commissions that are in place. But are these constitutional commissions as effective as they were designed to be? For instance, if you think about them, are these institutions that were created by this constitution, which was, looking at creating strong institutions that will help in the governance of the country, are these institutions as strong as they
Eric,
ought to be?
what makes a strong an institution strong?
Fadi.
The
Besha.
yes, the budget, the budgetary allocation it has, the caliber of leadership that it has.
That too, yes.
I mean, my mind goes to the National Land Commission, which was supposed to set right the sort of ills that we've had.
Yep.
They've been perpetrating even more ills than we previously had. So you actually wonder
even
what
gotten
on
worse.
earth.
It's interesting you say that because Mwende Kisilu says, unless we are celebrating massive looting, impunity, unemployment, and hopelessness, there's absolutely nothing to celebrate 10 years later. It seems that things may have gotten worse since then, since a time whereby this constitution was put in place to make sure that certain things were realized. And it seems that over time, things may have gotten worse. Even if you're just looking at things like impunity and corruption alone, things may have gotten worse. And this is what Kenyans will be dealing with at this point. And then hopefully start to ask the question.
Maybe they didn't get worse. Maybe it's because of the Constitution that now we are able to see them better.
Because
It's
we're able
because
to
of the
talk about it
Constitution now
more.
we can talk about it. We can unearth some of these things that were happening previously, which we could not do under the previous regime. Maybe that's one of the benefits of the Constitution. Now, the thing is, then do we have the people that are in office, the duty bearers? Are the duty bearers willing to actually do what the Constitution gives them as powers so they can deal with it?
This is where we go wrong. This is where we go wrong. Expecting
Somebody
leaders
else.
out of the kindness of their heart to actually do what they're supposed to do. No.
But the Constitution expects them. It's not out of the kindness of their
You
heart.
can expect from here till next year. That's
Believe
okay,
me,
but I
the
mean-
Constitution says so, states so, but until there is that push where we are a country that lives by the dictates of the law and a country that respects and understands that the law is paramount, we will keep talking about these things. And the only way that that can be seen and the only way that that can work is when what occupies our mind is the law being implemented judiciously and the law being implemented without favor. Yes, governors are going to be arrested. We will have situations where properties are forfeited to the state. But it will there'll be a huge change when the people, because these things don't happen in a vacuum, all right? When at the national level, you get to understand not the person, the people who are genuinely behind these issues we've had, say, for instance, in Afia House.
Yeah.
The people who've been involved in some of these serious security issues like the military or the police. And you wonder, when you know that such a person has actually been jailed as a result and has been found culpable, and it's the norm, so that you perpetrate this, but you know this is where you're going to, not you perpetrate and you figure, okay, what do I need to budget so that I stay out of jail?
No.
Not that, because
Right.
that is the norm now.
So much so that if you had an appetite for such kind of thing, it would disappear.
You acquire an appetite for other things,
Right. And
like
hopefully-
not doing the things that
Yeah,
you're doing.
and hopefully that appetite would then be for doing the right,
right
thing.
Yes, yes.
Elijah in Nairobi, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
We're fine,
Morning.
thank
Very
you.
well, thank you.
Yeah, so the Constitution, I look at it as neither good nor bad. It is a tool, and the utility of the tool determines whether it's being used for good or bad. When you take a child to school and you pick a particular school, you don't really go into the intricacies of the governance of the school. You take your child to a school where they will have a proper training, proper upbringing. How the board of directors or whichever administrative structure runs the school is not really your core concern. You want to know if your child will get the education and the values that you sent them there for. When we talk of this proverbial Wanjiko, she obviously does not understand constitutional law. And it shouldn't be her concern to decipher constitutional law and unpack it. What we do as citizens, or what we pretend to do, is elect people who will take this constitution and deliver that which we want.
Yeah.
How do we measure this? We look at our country in comparison to others. The same way things happen in school. It's a comparative process, regardless of what your background is, upbringing, whatever. There is always a metric. So whether we decide that our output is the happiness index or ease of doing business or corruption index, based on that is where we should say, are we doing well or wrong? And then ask ourselves, is the problem the tool or the implementers of the tool? The Constitution is overly expensive. People have said that time and again. There are also people who said it's the best one in the world. I think Justice Maraga was on record saying that. But he then quickly says the problem are the implementers of the tool. So Katiba, 10 years, yeah, it's excellent to have a Katiba, but you have wolves guarding sheep. We are not going to survive. It doesn't matter which constitution you put in place. Unless we get rid of the wolves, none of the lambs will grow to maturity.
Well, nice way of putting it. Thank you very much, Elijah.
How do you distinguish between the wolves and the sheep? Because it's not as though we import these leaders. They're homegrown. They're just us. You, Eric, in a leadership position.
They come and lie to us. Remember that question when you talk about the people who are in civil society at some point and then you elect them in positions of leadership and you start wondering what happened to them. Probably it's that. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
No, not necessarily. I mean,
you just did not realize that this is actually a wolf.
Actually, you come across people who genuinely were what they said they were. But this strong influence, what is it? Is it this need that we have to conform? Because one of the things that human beings do well is we conform.
Yep.
And we are afraid not to conform. People are afraid to be non-conformists. You are afraid to stand out.
For fear of being kicked out of said arena.
Or ridiculed. Or persecuted. Or made, or whatever the case may be. We all have cases of situations when we're in primary school where if you had a haircut, I am talking about, let me refer to myself. A haircut those days didn't mean you went to the barber. Haircut was something you had at home. Your mother, a cousin who you lived with who was older, or your grandmother when she was visiting, and was with a scissor.
Those were head cuts.
Yes, so what it actually meant was your haircut or your head represented a series of ridges. Okay? You would not hear the end of it in school. And what that also did, it wasn't just, but this was democratic. Boys and girls, same haircut. So if you're looking at people from the neck upwards, you would not be able to tell what is who or who is who. Now, the amount of fun that was made of you with your haircut made you dislike those haircuts.
Of course.
Okay. And when you went home and said, they're uneven, now, okay, the uneven bits were removed, but what ended up was you were odd. That's the point I'm trying to make. We are socialized to actually treat people who are unique or people who may not conform or who are different badly. We like people who conform. So when someone says that they presents themselves as a leader, I actually believe that they are what they say they are. But there's a strong pull to conform, and it's not as though they conform in a day.
It just happened.
You start with a shilling, then 2, then 3, then everybody's just sort of like attending meetings they shouldn't attend, and everybody, all that.
You're told this is how we do things here.
Yes. And with time, that becomes the norm for you.
So if you want to
you even forget what you were before.
Or even in some areas, the person may actually not receive a bribe or not be influenced that way, but they are a lone voice. So you don't sit in these crucial committees. You don't. You keep trying to raise your voice so that you can speak in the chamber, and the speaker does not see you.
Eric,
speaker doesn't see you. So you don't get these opportunities to stand out.
Socially speaking, think of it, for instance, things that have become normal. The idea, in my time, it used to be somebody called a sugar daddy. Then we acquired a term called sugar mommy. Went out of the window. Now we have more terminology. Even slay queen. I've never fully understood that one, but I hear it. Okay? Then sponsor. Now that one, depending on the part of the continent you come from, they are called blessers. They are called all sorts of names. But the manner in which the terminology is referenced, it is normal. It is part of our normal conversation. It never was. It is. But it mirrors and it points clearly to the social path that we've taken when
as a society.
Yes, where morality is concerned. It tells you clearly. So now, much as you may not talk about it unless you're in a select group, when you elect this person, because what you know is what you see. The bit that you don't see is now what you see when they actually now get to power.
When they get there.
Yes.
Well, we thank you very much for this conversation today. As we come to the conclusion of the show, let's remind you about this portal by the Kenya Ports Authority. Today we're looking at vessel services.
Right, so we're at the last bit of things now. An Operation Information is sent to finance for preparation of final port dues and your Steve Doring bills. Those are what we say now would essentially let you get your cargo on and off of the ship, right? So this is the last cog towards now when you get to the point where the shipping agent logs onto the portal and retrieves the bills to finalize payment. And once payment is finalized, then you can either pick up your cargo once it has come in, or at least you can send it off where you want it to go. And all of this information, yet again, seamless operations at the port, courtesy of Captain Cargo.
To access Captain Cargo, just log on to www.kpa.co.ke/Captain KARGO. CT, today's proverb, and how you decided to pick this particular one on this particular day of the Constitution.
It's because we all know that which suits us best and that which serves our interest best. And we often do not need someone to tell us. You don't need someone to tell you to steal. You don't need someone to tell you to take things which aren't yours. You don't need someone to tell you to lie to your people. These are decisions that you make when it suits your purposes. And unbeknownst to you, it will become your norm, and then there'll be consequences. And when the consequences arrive home is when now the reflection that should have taken place earlier takes place.
No, that's when the door is too far from where you are.
Remember African proverbs by their nature. You talk about something that people can relate to. At some point, everyone has had a stomach problem.
Yep.
And we know exactly how that works.
Yep.
You want to sort it out. And usually it means a quick dash
to the little room.
And you hope that the door is not locked.
Oh, wow.
So the proverb again.
The proverb is this. A man with diarrhea will not require anyone to give him directions to the door.
Say goodbye to the people, CT Muga and Nduh Okoh.
Let the conversation continue and do have a lovely day.
I, like CT, I'm wishing you the same.
Vile CT amesema.
Yes. CT said.
CT said, have a good day.
Nyinyi mko nyuma yake.
Have a good day, folks. Good morning. It's now 10 o'clock. See you tomorrow.